Damn, it is sticky, it is hot, humid. What is man, everybody? So here's the thing, Mopar, better get your act together, because this cute little filly from Detroit's about to ride down here and kick you square off in them nuts. So here's the deal. I mean, we saw this coming a while back, but the situation is getting even more intense. We've got the Mach 1 now entering into the fray. And are you kidding me with the specifications on this car? This is the car I've been warning y'all about since about last year, when the GT350 was kind of riding off into the sunset, and I kept going, damn, it'd be sweet if they put a freaking 10-speed behind that thing. Or watch out, guys, Ford's gonna do what Fords do best and drop some freaking parts out of the parts bin that they, I don't know, support their racers with onto a car, kind of like they did back in the day with the Mach 1 and with the Bullet, mind you. Bullet had a completely different intake altogether. And they're going to show up with this thing, and they're just going to go around and front hand, backhand, left and right. The Mach 1 represents the absolute end of the discussion when it comes to the American pony car. You say what you want about Mopar. I fly the flag high myself, clearly. But the fact of the matter is that Mopar has been sitting on their dicks for so long because the sales have been so good because of image and marketing. They have marketed themselves in a way that has basically set themselves apart, which is fantastic, and they should have. The platform demands that they do. But the ridiculous part of the whole thing is that somewhere along the way, they thought that they had done enough to satisfy the needs of all of their loyalists in perpetuity. This is the same mistake Mopar made, I don't know, about 4 or 5 decades ago. And now, here we go. Mach 1, GT350 intake, revised tune, revised throttle body, available with an automatic transmission, and oh yeah, in the parts bin is a 373 gear. That gear, along with that intake, along with the revised tune, is going to put that thing so deep into the 11s and so far ahead of anything powered by a 392, 1320 included, that it's going to make you wonder what the hell just happened. And in the meantime, Dodge, where are you in this whole equation anyway? Nobody is talking about Mopar anymore. In fact, the only time that they're talking about 392s is when they're pointing and laughing at this stage of the game. We're 5 years deep into the revamp. We're 5 years deep with the 8-speed automatic. At some point, something's got to change. Hell, the Mustang seems to change literally every time you turn your head. And now with the GT350 exiting stage left, and with the Mach 1 taking its place, remember that little thing that we were talking about not too long ago when I said something to the effect of, what would happen if Ford, I don't know, just started throwing their own weight around in this environment? In other words, if they just opened up their own catalog and started throwing parts on the car, what would that thing be like? Well, it would look a lot like the Mach 1. And aside from a set of higher lift, longer duration cams, this thing, and a set of long tubes and maybe a catback, this thing's sitting poised and ready to drop an accidental 500 horsepower to the rear wheels and not even bat an eyelash. And oh yeah, the parts are already there. And wait, that's not all. Check the approximate cost of this thing, guys. That's the thing that's going to blow your mind. It's going to come in, starting price somewhere around 50 grand. So let's say, because, I don't know, it's a Ford, you can grab the thing after a couple of years, and, you know, realistically, we're talking Mach 1, not voodoo money here, and GT350 and all. I mean, Shelby do got to get his paper, right? But the reality is that this thing is not going to be that limited commodity that the GT350 was. Especially with an automatic transmission, this thing is going to be maybe attainable for around 45 grand out the door. You got to pay a little bit extra here and there, but you know what? It's the damn same price as something powered by a 392. And you'll be damn hard pressed to figure out which one is better if you're talking about ergonomics. They're both nice, but damn if that Mustang isn't real nice. And the realistic issue here is that it already comes with some hot rod goodies. Add a little bit extra and, well, you won't be thinking about that little 392 powered car that you test drove a little bit earlier in the day, especially when you consider the fact that it's got all the other gadgets and gizmos that make the thing fun. So I'm asking you guys, what does Mopar need to do? This game of keeping up with the Joneses seems to be a little bit tough. Now, let's not forget a few things. First and foremost, let's not forget how far ahead of the pack the Mopar was when it was released, and I'm talking about the 15 remodel with the 8-speed automatic. We're talking about a 392 that makes 485 horsepower. However, for you older guys that are used to, I don't know, the older SAE correction, it's over 500 horsepower. That is a stroked small block making 25% over displacement in horsepower. And it's stock. That's an amazing number. Now, it's not roughly 500 horsepower on a 5-liter impressive, but given the compactness of the engine and the fact that, well, there's a zillion of these things running around, well, there's a zillion 5-liters too, but you catch my drift. The idea that this 4,300 and whatever something pound car can, you know, sneak into the 11s on a tire in good weather is fantastic, but it's been doing it for 5 years, and the 392 is getting somewhat long in the tooth, considering it's coming up on damn near its 9th or realistically its 10th birthday, 10th model year, if nothing else for this year. Something's got to be done, because hell, I mean, we're looking at, oh, I don't know, 1, 2, let me think about this. 1 Coyote Boss, 2 with a 15 revamp. This is the 5th go around, 6th go around if you count the Voodoo. Yeah, Ford is continually improving the breed, whereas Mopar is continuing to sit there, get fat, and just collect dividend checks on a platform that is as old as Stonehenge. So, in saying all of that, talk about a compliment sandwich there for the Mopar. I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited to see where this Mustang goes. And again, because it comes with the goodies and because it's got the look that it does, it's going to be a very, and I mean very difficult sell for folks moving forward. And you can say, oh, well, you know, I like the big car, I like the retro looks and all of that. Whatever, doesn't matter. Because the fun part of it all goes away if you start seeing taillights in your windshield. But anyway, let me say what's up to everybody real quick. Don't want to forget about that. TU saying, yeah, buddy, what's up, TU? Michael Smith's checking in saying, hey, what's up, man? TU saying, man, let's talk about that damn Mach 1. Hell yeah, we going to. TU saying, Ford missed a great opportunity with this one. Yeah, I disagree with that one. EG saying, coming from Mach 1 content creator, this is tough. EG Forum say, glad to see you cover it, B. Mason, this is Ryan from Tough Guys. Hey, what's up, Ryan? Good to see you, man. I need to get a hold of you. Sorry, it's been crazy lately. I'll get a hold of you, though, buddy. David saying, Professor B. Mason, what's up, man? TU saying the A10 trans combined with a revised retune 5.2 Voodoo in the 3,800-pound Mach 1 would have been easily into the high 10s in a drag pack. Don't discount the Coyote. Here's the thing. Coyote with the smaller cams, but with the GT350 intake, considering the fact that the heads are already really good, and it's got the 5.2 bore sizing, is already basically putting you there. And here's the twist. It's going to come in a package that, should you choose to throw boost at it, you know how them Coyotes love them some boost, right? I mean, damn. You're looking at a car that will accidentally go low 10s or high 9s. But again, that's with a considerable investment. And the reason why I'm excited about it, I'm not worried about what the car can do with boost. Everything is faster with boost, and then you get into the conversations about what does better. It doesn't matter. I'm talking in a A10 car with a gear. Oh, and I haven't even gotten into the manual cars. The manual cars get the Tremec out of the GT350. And if that's the case, order one with a manual transmission. tear out the 373, which is going to be probably standard because that ain't going to do any good with a 7,500 RPM engine. Get you a set of 409s, 430s, whatever you can jam into that pumpkin. And now all of a sudden, you've got a car that is nasty fun. I mean, we're talking about a car that will keep you entertained indefinitely and will do everything at that point. You throw a gear in it, get a drag pack, get some autocross set up, get a closed circuit set up. Play around with it on the street. You want to learn how to drift? Good package. The thing will do a little bit of everything. And oh yeah, if you blow it to smithereens, the parts are at least readily available, significantly less expensive than the Mopar stuff. And on top of that, you've got the Mopar Performance Catalog, which has got even more stuff in there for you to play with. Starting to make it kind of tough. And for that, or rather to that point, this is just one more missed opportunity on the part of Dodge. They're not at all supporting the grassroots racer. The guy that just wants to get to the drag strip, have a good time, keep up with the Joneses, flex a brand, talk a little smack, have a little fun, eat a hot dog, have a soda pop, roll it home. That's who they're not watching in this. That's a competitive group of guys. I should know. There's about 150 of them at my local every Friday night. Michael Smith saying, this was 5,000 mile GT3 if you had a dealership. Buy my work for 45 grand yesterday. I can see the cost of that coming down too. Tueller saying, nice ride. Thank you very much. She is filthy right now, by the way. George is checking in. What's up, man? Was saying, what's going on, man? The Mach 1 should have been a 5.2 GT500 engine without the supercharger, similar to what the Mach 1 of the new Edge generation was with the Cobra. Thought of that too. Here's my thought on that though. I don't think the longer stroke would have really done it a whole lot of good. It's kind of a minor deal, and I think that revamping and re-engineering that crank, although seemingly simple, would have necessitated getting a whole new engine, more or less re-EPA certified. At that point, they could have just kept making the voodoo. So by that standard, even though it would be a naturally aspirated version of the 5.2, I think there's some like legalities that are kind of kicking in there. Whereas in this case, they have a rotating assembly, cams, heads, and everything else that's already been EPA certified, and they've got an intake manifold that's already been EPA certified. So that kind of checks both boxes, and the tune obviously was vetted just because it's going to be a standalone tune. So I think that's the reason why they did it. That's kind of a money thing, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't know that there would have been that big of a power difference anyway, especially considering that they're both using the same pistons. It'd be kind of hard to justify the cost difference. Oh, EG, yeah, I'll be on you guys here pretty soon, probably sometime tomorrow. John saying, Hellafant. Hella nope. Chasing Car is saying, good points about Mopar not improving as a result. I will probably go for a C7 Stingray or a GT350 since Mopar refuses to innovate. And to that point, should you choose to pick up for yourself a clean, used hot rod Mopar, look no further than your Ford and Chevrolet used car lots. There are a ton of them. In fact, most of them will be found in Ford used car lots. Listen, guys, this is where the rubber meets the road. The market will dictate where the money is spent and what is on the road. And the reality is overwhelmingly favoring the Mustang. And it's an unfortunate thing too, but when performance enthusiasts start to get their hands on cars and they start to figure out that they're not very well supported, they're going to go elsewhere. And where else would you go? You either get a C6 Corvette, 5th gen Camaro with the LS, or 5.0 Mustang. These things are too expensive to make go fast. And the reality is that once you start digging into them, labor alone will drive you nuts. Plus, it's funny too. There are you can get a tune, mind you, but it's funny. There's a lot of guys that don't want to touch these cars. Pretty interesting. Whereas, you know, the Mustangs are just a lot more vetted Oh, and by the way, the parts that are on the Mustang have already been proven to be solid performers. I mean, look, you're getting a solid 20 horsepower over the existing platform. That's a lot. That's a whole lot, especially when you consider the fact that it's just an intake manifold and a few other parts with a revised tune. Think of what you can do with this thing. So, oh yeah, and all that talk, by the way, about, oh, well, you know, the Mustang has less power and, you know, compared to a 392, you know, you line them up and the 392 will typically win at the drag strip. Yeah, that used to be the case. And it is still the case with a GT. I mean, tire for tire, most of the time the 392 is going to come out on top, yeah, provided it's a Challenger and not the heavier Charger. But the Mustang will be reeling that car in like a 2-pound trout. And on the way, or by the way, I should say, on the way to that victory, in the wake of that Mustang can come a bit of a humiliation because there's nothing worse than getting reeled in. Yeah, that's a confidence killer. And now with 480 horsepower on tap, and oh yeah, listen, we all know that 480 horsepower could possibly be a little bit on the conservative side. I mean, Ford's done a pretty good job of being a little bit coy with some numbers. Might be a factual number, but the reality is that we're looking at a situation where we've got a car basically staring us down, waiting to get lined up against anything Mopar. Never mind the fact that, you know, lining up against a GT350 in a straight line contest is a no contest with this thing, with an A10. Know that coming into it. I mean, you have in effect showed up to a fist fight with pillows strapped to your hands at that point. And so Mopar guy, you think you got the leg up because you got all this extra torque? Look, these cars are not getting any lighter. And that's the other thing. I mean, Mopar hasn't even dropped a new platform yet. I mean, never mind they're not going to do anything in terms of horsepower. Fine, I'll live with that. But the reality here is that not only are they not doing anything with power, but they're not doing anything to lighten the cars up. And look, in this world that we're living in, Mopar is actually sliding backwards. Every year that Mopar doesn't innovate is a year that they're not leading the pack. Now, keeping in mind, yeah, back in 2015, if you can remember that far back, Mopar was the big swinging cojones, but that lasted a grand total of about a year, maybe 2 years. And then after that, the Mustang got better, tuning got really good for the 2015s. Folks started figuring out that eking power out of these Mopars is pretty tough. Factory did a pretty good job already as it sits. And while everybody else, and when I say everybody else, all of about 3 companies tried to clamor to figure out ways to make these Mopars go fast, other folks were accidentally making Mustangs fast. And of course, the LS crowd is the LS crowd. You already know how that goes. So Mopar, not easy to work on. Mopar, expensive to work on. Mopar, heavy. Mopar, fragile if you start really throwing power at those 392 cars, at least in the transmission range. I should know. Yeah, you start to wonder, what am I doing here? How did I find myself here? It's like you just kind of came to at a party that you really didn't want to be at to begin with. Because let's face it, a lot of the guys that were buying those Mopars, especially back in 2015, 16, and 17, a lot of those guys were former Ford guys. And not as many Chevy guys made the transition over, but a lot of Ford guys were, because a lot of those Ford guys were Mopar guys before they were Ford guys. Well, now they're remembering why they aren't Ford guys, or why they aren't Mopar guys anymore, why they made the switch to Ford. And so because of that, this Mach 1 is going to have more Mopar guys flocking into Ford dealerships than any other one of the cars that you've seen out there. Mark my words, you're going to see guys of a certain age dragging their scat packs over to Ford dealerships and lining up to buy their favorite color of maroon Mach 1. And there's going to be a ton of them. And you're going to see them at your local drag strip. They're going to be infested with these things. And they're going to be accidentally running mid-11s. And everybody out there with an NA combo is going to be wondering, what the fuck just happened? Well, what happened? What happened is that Mopar got stale. Mopar got stagnant. They got fat and happy and have basically allowed their complacency and their, I don't know, lack of respect in a lot of ways for their loyalists get in the way, and profits get in the way of innovating a car that a lot of people love and want to see better and want to have more fun with. Haven't supported it, made it too expensive, too heavy, plenty of power, great powertrain if it's stock, but we all know how far stock will take you nowadays. I mean, look, yeah, it was great. Back in the day, a Scat Pack, you could drag an 1190 out of it in great weather. They're fun cars. They're fast cars still to this day. Make no mistake, I love me some 392. Like, love 392 cars. I've even said it before, if I could have a 392 on one side of the garage and a GT350 on the other side of the garage, that kind of rounds out your entire driving experience. When you talk about bookending a driving experience, there you go. Oh, damn it. And then the Mach 1 shows up. And remember what I said about the Camaro? The Camaro was the bottom of a triangle, okay? It didn't have the low-end punch that the 392 has. It didn't have the high RPM rush that the 5.0 has. Didn't have the ergonomics of either one of them, and yet it was supposed to be a player and a contender. It's an LT, not quite as upgradable, not quite as familiar, not quite as cheap to make go fast. Things were looking shitty for the Camaro. But what did Ford do? When Camaro was spending in its entire career trying to be more Mustang than Mustang, Mustang just became more Camaro than Camaro. And now it can be wholeheartedly argued that that car is now at the top. It took the Camaro's place, inverted the triangle, now it's the top of the pyramid, so to speak. You've got the torque of the Coyote, just roll with me here, with the better intake in the GT350, the A10 to go along with it with a 355 gear, revised tuning. This thing is going to be a little monster. It's going to be torquey. It's, by comparison at least, to the GT, but not quite as torquey or snappy as a 392. It's going to have the top end rush of the Mustang where the 392 doesn't. It's going to have the upgradability, even though it's already got some upgrades, and oh yeah, the pricing is going to be right there in line with all of them. Are you kidding me? Like, this is one of those scenarios where if you're working for FCA, you're scrambling right now, and I don't want to see any more smoking tire advertisements, people doing some little four-wheel drift thing on this, in this imaginary urban environment where you're sliding it around industry and you're sliding it around the docks, and everybody's Billy Badass and everybody's too fast and too furious for their own good. Because God knows, you start sliding one of these things around, it better be in a padded environment, because you get these things sliding, they don't tend to stop when you weigh 4,500 pounds. You get the idea. I don't want to see any more of that crap until we get a bump in power, drop in weight, drop in price, staggered wheel set, for fuck's sake. At least make the car somewhat safe to drive. I mean, I would venture off to say that the 392 is not even safe with the shitty ass stock tires. Hang on just a second. CFL James, thank you very much. Say Mopar builds a better looking car. That's why it outsold the Camaro and Mustang since 08 with the same Challenger platform. Well, a lot of people would agree with you, but it didn't outsell the Mustang. But it did outsell the Camaro. In fact, gave the Camaro a what's for in terms of being drug out to the woodshed, especially if you consider the fact that Camaro, well, they thought they were just going to take over fleet sales, especially on the rental car side. They didn't. Lots of Mopars on that end. So Mustang in general has done extremely well. And the problem is that for a lot of folks, they want to be a part of their car. They want to be a part of the culture of the car. They want to be a part of something. They want to enjoy and be a part of that lifestyle. That's great. But let's take a little bit of a history lesson real quick from Harley Davidson. Perfect example of this. And Mopar is kind of following in the Harley Davidson marketing 101, footprints in the sand here. What does that mean? Okay, you take an image, and instead of marketing the material good, you market the brand itself. You market independence, you market the ruckus, you market the bad boy image. Which brand am I talking about? Am I talking about Mopar, or am I talking about Harley Davidson? Show images of tire smoke, rock and roll music, dudes and chicks tatted up, that whole thing. Again, which brand am I talking about? Harley or Mopar? You can't tell me. And I won't even tell you which one I was thinking of. It's the same. Hell, it might even be the same character actors. That's the point that I'm trying to make. They're marketing an image instead of building a brand name. Instead of building a material product to take to market. Whereas Ford, you don't really see that so much with them. A little bit more sedated, a little bit more subdued. Except now they just walked over to their toy box, started throwing parts on a Mustang that was already really good. I don't know, man. Makes it tough. Hey, Sean's checking in. Mach 110 speed with a gear and tires, 11s. Deep 11s. Sean used to have one. There he is. Saying he used to have a brand new 2004 Mach 1. I hope this one comes with the shaker. I'm not sure if it does. Let's see. Last one I checked in was TU. And yeah, be on the lookout for that car to be tickling the 10s, by the way, brother. Marcus was saying, talking about the 5,000 mile one. There you go. Let's see. I think I got a little bit too far backwards. Jazz Hellcat saying, have you guys seen Pike's Tune Mini Red Eyes? Yeah, number of them, as a matter of fact. Like a whole lot of them. Funny thing about the Red Eyes, and the Demons for that matter. I mean, Demons, Red Eyes, basically the same thing. Most of the tune is practically identical on the 93 octane side. So, yeah, super easy. Give them a shout. They'll get you taken care of. I've run several of them down the drag strip for customers. Fun cars, just in different states of tune, anywhere from just a flat tune on a drag pack all the way through to upper lower pulley on a race gas tune. So fun cars to drive. I love them all though. EG Performance saying no problem. You can contact Ether or myself. Oh, good deal. John Quinn saying Helephant. Nope, offend. I'm just messing with you, man. I just don't. Helephant and I don't know. We ain't boys. I mean, we're cool, but we ain't like that. Chase Carr saying good points about Mopar not improving as a result. Got you on that one. I think I saw that one. Oh yeah, EG saying I think the manual Mach 1 will be wild since the trans is not an MT82. Absolutely. TU saying Mopar needs to take 392 and add fully forged internals, leave it in A, and push the stock power from 485 to 520 and 505. Place it in a 4,100 pound scat pack with a one-piece drive shaft and a 373 gear. So here's the thing. The way that the car is set up and geared from the factory right now, 373 with that kind of power would be a little bit steep, but it does kind of make sense to throw a 331 at it. And here's the other thing, and that's really more for an RPM target at the end of a quarter mile. One of the things that I've been a huge proponent of is just a revised intake manifold. Something along the lines of, like the design of an LS, a little bit shorter runner, not too much shorter, but a little bit shorter with a little bit larger diameter runner. Or take the existing runner length and just increase the diameter by about somewhere around 10 to 12%. Let the thing breathe a little bit better. Larger throttle body. Get rid of that stupid neck thing at the front of the intake manifold. That would go a long way. Look, I'll put it to you like this. That intake manifold, with me doing a boatload of work to it, with a Fastman true 3-ported 84mm throttle body, the data on that is on a 392 with a cam and headers and everything else. So keep in mind, the intake runners are a little bit less active when you've got a cam because you've got some overlap there. But that being said, the data, even with all that being done, you're still not going to get to the flow numbers that you're looking for. Velocity will be there, but the thing will just never make power. And the curve, no matter what you do, because the intake manifold is going to dictate the curve, that thing just kind of flattens out. It comes out like gangbusters, and the torque curve is real strong, but it just kind of lays over, and it's because it just doesn't have the intake to stretch out on the big end the way it needs to actually make power. So yeah, I mean, you can put a little bit more aggressive cam in a 392, even with that intake manifold. Take a little bit of the activity away from the intake runner, build a little bit more horsepower and torque along the way, and it would be so much better. And that's really all you would need to do. And for the rest of it, just put the thing on a bit of a diet. I mean, we're not asking for much, just a couple of 100 pounds, 250, 300 pounds would be okay. You know, it's a good place at least to start. You know, and then the guys are going to start taking parts out of it anyway, and by that time, you know, you can get the thing down to, say, 4,000 pounds as opposed to 4,300 pounds. That's really where you want to be. You know, try to get the thing down, or really 3,800 pounds if you can get away with it, 3,900 pounds. Something sub 4,000 would be even better, obviously. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers in this, and you try not to, you know, ask for more. You know, don't bite off more than you can chew. I think that with just some improvement, there'll be at least a closing of the delta between the Mopar and the Mach 1. I'll just say this. I can't wait to see one at the drag strip, because that car on a drag pack, dude, it's running in the 11s, like deep into the 11s. So anyway, getting back to it here. Let's see. T saying Mopar. Oh, I just talked about that one. T said Mopar did that. The Scat Pack would wouldn't take a back seat to any 5.0 car. Good point, and that's all. That's exactly what we were talking about. It's got to reclaim its place. I get it. There's always going to be an ebb and a flow, a changing of the guard as the Mustang increases and is in innovation. Mopar has got to at least be doing something in the shadows to get themselves in a position to take over that top spot, or at least be competitive with it. Because all of the smoke and rock and roll music and you know, sliding and shit talking on the part of Mopar won't do you any good if you're getting stomped at the drag strip. And unfortunately, that might be what ends up happening. And oh yeah, let's be honest, the Mustang is an easier car to launch on a track that's not great in terms of track prep. Mustang is going to be a little bit easier to launch, possibly a little bit more consistent, a little bit more confidence inspiring, especially for guys that are maybe only just getting into this, or even guys that have got a couple of years experience. It's a better platform potentially to learn with. So I don't know, you guys tell me, what do you think? Makes that Mustang Mach 1 look real compelling. George Let's Be saying, good point on that one. The Mach 1 would be a good seller, I think. It will be interesting to see what people end up doing with them down the road. Absolutely. George Let's Speed is saying some cat deletes in a tune on the 85 will easily be close to 500 wheel horsepower, not to mention a few 100 pounds lighter. Exactly my point. Harley Ed saying, I might have to get me one for sure. There's a lot of guys that are saying that. Harley Ed saying Chevy should have brought back the Z28. I am still heartbroken over the 5th gen Z28. I mean, at that point in time, I had been saving my pennies and dimes, really was looking at the Camaros, loved the LS platform. LS7 was going to be in the Camaro. My world was about to get real interesting, only for them to drop a $72,000 price tag on that car, which, I mean, immediately took me out of the running. I didn't have a prayer at that price, and I'm still kind of pissed off about it. I still can't believe it either. How do you, I mean, really? But anyway, yeah, that would have been cool. And Mustang was kind of in the process of ruling the roost, and Camaro coming out with a Z28, I mean, they just didn't really have an engine to compete there. So, yeah, the ZL1, which, let's be honest, 5th gen ZL1 is a neat car, but I mean, 392 cars can handle their own with one of those things. And I mean, that's just the way it is. But even the newer ZL1, as neat as a car as it is, just has too small of a supercharger. I mean, it really does. I see them at the drag strip all the time. All the time. And I'll be honest with you guys, to see one go into the 10s, you know it's had a significant amount of work done to it. They just don't go 10s. They go 1120s and 1130s like clockwork. But going 10s just is not what that car is going to do. Again, supercharger small, heat soaks quick, but a neat car nonetheless. Now that engine with that car with the ZR1 blower, oh, George is saying, I don't know why Camaros don't come with better gearing in their A10s like Ford's 297 gears are horrible for the 60-foot. Yeah, kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, 292. Listen, 292, 297, too not right of a gear, I'll tell you that. You know, that car with a set of anything gears in the rear. Look, it ain't hard to make an A10 Camaro run in the 10s, by the way, guys. Don't let it get you twisted. But still, I mean, it's like, damn, that's nuts. But then again, I'll catch up with 262, so what do I know? CJ's checking, hey, B, what's going on? T saying, no disrespect, man, but that's literally the same as a Scat Pack Challenger. Talking about Sean. Harley said, no shaker, Sean. Oh, Sean's saying that he had the Scat shaker. Let's see. Yeah, no, they're not going to be adding, Sean's saying no shaker equals no Mach 1. TU's going, Ford's stupid to add the iconic Mach 1 shaker. I'm surprised they didn't do it. But then again, I mean, I don't know. I see how that would be a little bit gimmicky, but if they made a true intake for it, that'd be kind of cool too. I mean, I like the shaker on the Mopars. X is saying, let's get some roasting of that new Mach 1 going. Unfortunately, I can't. I mean, the car is a little too good, just in principle. Let me also set the stage, guys. We're talking about this from a straight principle point of view. And what I mean by that is you've got Ford. They're constantly innovating. You had the Mustang, then you had the GT is what I'm talking about here. You had the Mustang GT, then you had the GT350 and the GT500. Pretty darn sweet. I mean, yeah, Mopar's got the RT, the Scat Packs, and the Hellcat, and the Red Eye, and like they had the Demon. I get all of that. And really, you could say we got the 392, the Hellcat, and the Demon, or the Red Eye, I should say. That's all fine and good, but let's look at this from a little bit different point of view. Or let's compare it at least, and show you where Mopar kind of knows where they screwed up, maybe. Or at least I can show you where Mopar really got hung up. So let's take a look at the Mustang lineup. I mean, there's some definite designations between the cars. You know, the Mustang GT versus the GT350 versus the GT500, vast differences, right? But you do have some interchangeability, and that GT350 intake, along with a tune and an exhaust and a few other things, really wakes up that Coyote. You've got a little bit of intermingling there. GT500 is a little bit out of the conversation, which, by the way, I still have not seen one at the drag strip. Not one. Haven't even seen it show up. Nobody's driven one to the drag strip to park it, eat a burger, drink a beer, and watch drag racing. Nobody's even done that yet. Where are they at? Anyway, I digress. You see what I'm talking about with the Mustang. There is a parts house basically built into that car where you open up a Ford Racing Performance Parts catalog and it will teach you how to build a car. Mopar, on the other hand, is a little bit different. You got the 392 and then you got the Hellcat and the Red Eye. Very distinct, different cars. But here's the funny thing. 392 is as built as you can get that thing and make that kind of power on the street, make it emissions legal, do all that kind of good stuff. That's great. That's awesome. The Hellcat is the Hellcat, and then you have the Red Eye. And the funny thing about the Red Eye is you can get it with a 262 or a 309 gear. Can't do that with the Hellcat. Red Eye's got a different supercharger, makes more boost. But the supercharger in the Hellcat's already proven to be able to go 8s in the right setup. What do you need the other supercharger for? The Red Eye is known for going into having thermal issues, weird little limp home or, throws bypass, chops throttle mode if you start trying to mess with them from a tuning standpoint. Hellcats just don't care. They're like, whatever, I'll do whatever you want. But the funny thing about the Hellcat, though, is going back to that first point, you can't option it with the 309 gear. Well, we all know what happens when you put a 309 gear in a Hellcat, don't we, Red Eyes? So anyway, fun thing about it is that there's no solid place for the Mopar guy to go in-house to build any power. If he's naturally aspirated on a grassroots level, he's got to buy something supercharged. Whereas the Mustang's got the GT350 and all the assorted GT350 parts and an aftermarket that is just fawning all over them. Makes you kind of a little bit jealous if you're a Mopar guy, especially if you're into naturally aspirated cars. Because there's only one two-door. Remind you, there's only one two-door that has the 392. Well, I'm not talking about the 6.4. I guess you could call a 3/4 ton truck that, right? But no, we're talking about the Performance 392, and that's the Challenger. Everything else is a 4-door. There's only one two-door that has a supercharged engine, whether it's Red Eye or Hellcat. That's the Challenger. Everything else is a 4-door. Mustang's doing a pretty good job of putting something out there with the Mach 1 that appeals to everybody. It's got an upside like you wouldn't believe from a performance standpoint, and it will literally do everything under the sun depending on what you want to do. Again, drag racing, road racing, closed circuit stuff, autocross. Everything can be done under one package with that car, and now you've got some of the goodies to do it with. Not saying that you couldn't do it before, but it's kind of cool to see it. Oh yeah, and it's coming in at the same price as its Mopar counterpart. Oh yeah, and they're not even looking back at the Camaro, by the way. It doesn't matter what the Camaro costs. They've got the GT Mustang, the base model GT Mustang at that to go up against that car. But this is a completely different animal, and it's going to be targeting a completely different audience as well. Let's see. Oh, CJ's asking, hey, to you, what do you think of the almighty 427 SOHC Cammer? It's not even. It's a novelty engine, CJ. It's nothing. Trust me, in this day and age, again, it's a novelty. That being said, you can make a boatload of power, but why would you bother? Not for that kind of money. But Kelsey makes heads for it, though. Ethan Axe saying, what yields better gains if you had to do one between the two, 85 or cat delete? I would do neither. Cat delete's not necessary on these engines at all. I've already proven that, but at the drag strip and on the dyno. And E85, the problem is the engine, it's got some decent compression, but they just don't respond that well to more timing. They've got an incredibly active intake runner, Even though it's not a swirl port or high velocity, it's, you know, it's a tumble port head, but the cam has got a very wide lobe separation angle. So in essence, the E85 proposition, you'll pick up torque, you'll pick up some horsepower, but it's not like you're going to pick up a boatload of either. So just know that coming into it. To you saying, I'd be proud to own any 7-liter Chevy engine. They're awesome. They're so freaking awesome. When the heads are reworked, because they need to be reworked because they got problems, but when the heads are reworked, put a cam in it, MSD intake, long tubes, and I mean, they are stupid fast. I mean, just awesome engines. CJ saying maybe Mopar needs to convert their Hemi V8s to convert their Hemi V8s. Nah, it doesn't quite work like that. Packaging would be a bit of a problem. I'm talking about converting them to 32 valve and overhead cam. Needs to be made smaller. Needs to be made smaller, higher revving. The whole package needs to be smaller if they're going to do something like that. Or figure out a cheap way to turbocharge them all. CJ saying sounds awesome to TU. Talking about bringing the 3rd gen 426 back. Yeah, no, wouldn't mess with that. If you've never driven one, if they're not tuned properly, in other words, tuned for racing, they're kind of a turd. At low RPM, especially at tip-end torque, they're a little bit lazy. But you get them up around $5,000 and they kind of wake up a little bit. Even the street Hemis did. Now, convert it to solid roller, or at least convert it to a modern roller profile. Little bit different story. They wake up pretty nice then. You can actually start making some power with those engines at that point. Sean, you say next generation Challenger better be at least 300 pounds lighter. You know, I'm telling you, I would love to see a lighter version of the car, but they've got to get around to doing something, and I mean quick. Again, we are coming up on what was it? 2008. You know, that's a little bit long in the tooth. What is that? 13 model years, counting 2008. So 8, 9, 10. But even with the 2015, we're still looking at a couple of innovations behind. I mean, think of an innovation like a generation. We're still a couple of generations behind the Mustang. Got to get with the program. Look, they're selling these things. It's like they can't make enough of them, it seems like. There's enough money in the kitty to freaking start doing something with these cars. And again, stop trying to pander to an image. And some of them starting to get real sick of, by the way. Image pandering. I hate that kind of stuff. Anytime that you put on a freaking costume, whether it's somebody all inked up, sliding around the streets, acting like I wish I could be acting right now, but you get the idea. All of that is just costuming. All of that is just marketing. All of that is for effect. It's bullshit. It's a lie is what it is in some respects. You know, private track, closed course, professional driver, whatever. You mean to tell me I can't do that in that car? You just showed me that car doing that stuff. I want to do that in that car, and you're telling me I can't do that? Come on. Anyway, it's bullshit and cheap clothing, and that's the problem. It's pandering to an image, pandering and over-romanticizing a past that Mopar doesn't have. Keep that in the back of your mind when you see that kind of stuff. Pandering to a past, romanticizing a past that never existed. I mean, sure, Mopar back in the 60s had something going on. In the early 70s, pretty cool. But as soon as times got just a little bit tough, they jumped ship. And the only thing that you had really to play with was the Dodge Magnum, of course, the Little Red Express, what do they call the other Dodge truck, the Warlocks, You had, you know, a 360 or a 340 Aspen you could maybe play with. I mean, there were some things floating around in the kitty during the 70s, like the mid 70s, but and now, you know, I mean, they've always kind of tried to buck the trend somehow, but realistically, even back in the 60s, it was more of a marketing proposition even then. So, I don't know, man. When they left their pony car roots, if you want to call it that, when they left their big B-body roots behind, left a lot of the loyal Mopar guys in the wake. That's what started to really upset folks. Let's see. Ethan saying, all the sport guys are not happy with the new Mach 1. It's just a rebadge of already existing bullet. Let's be honest. Anybody that has $350 can get the 18 manifold and make around the same power. True, but you can't get the bullet with an automatic. And even though it is a bit of a rebranding, it still is different, technically speaking, than the GT. I feel your pain, brother. Trust me, I do. But for those that are looking at it for what it is, and from the Mopar seat, this is a new movie. This is a new pair of shoes. This is, I mean, a new girl is walking past, and her racks, we're just seeing if something pops out. We don't have anything on our end like that. I mean, we got the wide body Charger. Okay, that was interesting for about 15 minutes, but we saw that coming, but there's no performance gain there. This is a major difference. This is a car with serious power that's going to have an automatic that's going to be going up against cars that, you know, we're calling the drag strip their home. Don't worry about handling. You own the drag strip. What? Mach 1 just showed up to the party. Oh, what's that? I mean, what is it? Now, the Bullet's got a 10-speed or a 6-speed manual. That thing's easy to beat. Yeah, this has got the 10-speed auto. Oh, that's a problem. Especially when you consider the fact it's got the extra power. Yeah, sure, it's got the manifold or whatever you can still get, but it comes from a parts catalog. It comes from your local Ford dealership. Which reminds me, thank you for reminding me, my friend, what the hell is it that I can't go to a Dodge dealership and get a drive shaft from a Red Eye? Why is that? Go to a Ford dealership, I can get the drive shaft to anything. Anything that they sell. They'll be more than happy to sell me a drive shaft for a GT350, GT500, Mustang GT, Ford pickup truck, anything. They'll sell it to me. What about a hood? Go to a Ford dealership and go, man, I would love that hood. Can I get a hood off of that GT350? Sure. Hey, Bob, get the guy a hood. Can't do that if you own a Demon. Can't get a Demon hood. I don't even know if you can get the twin snorkel off the Hellcats and the Red Eyes. I think you have to have a VIN for that. Those are VIN locked. Oh, wait, if you want the openly available rear seat delete, can I get that? Nope. Kind of tough being a Mopar guy. Kind of tough to stay a Mopar guy, more to the point, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to be a Mopar guy. What, I mean, buy into the marketing. I mean, we've all seen how marketing can suck us all into anything at this stage of the game. I mean, anything is possible to mindfuck the populace at this stage. I mean, you got cold air intakes that apparently make 35 horsepower. You've got exhaust systems that make 25 horsepower. You've got blower spacers that are supposed to add boost and make you go faster. All the while, all of this has been track tested and validated as no gain propositions. But marketing, media proposition will have you believe you're going to build power. This is a situation where not only is it proven to make power on the Ford side, it's CARB compliant. EPA got that covered. Known to make power, and oh yeah, just so happens to be readily available over the counter. I mean, this is like buying drugs at the drugstore, the good kind. So the issue that you're going to run into if you're a Mopar guy and you're seeing this Mach 1, you've already known what's been going on with Ford. This is the point that I'm making here. And to the point that the Mach 1 is just a warmed over bullet. I get that, but hold on to that. Coming from the Mopar camp, it's a whole new car. It represents a level of innovation. It represents something that we were going, oh shit, could you imagine that bullet with an automatic, or could you imagine that GT350 with an automatic? Eesh. Aside from a gearing option, it's already basically done for you. And because the aftermarket loves that car more than pretty much anything else that's not true old school LS, sky's the limit. Pocketbook is the limit. And even at that, it's not going to ding you that hard. I mean, sure, yeah, okay, whatever with the oil pump gears or whatever. I'm pretty sure they might have even had that figured out by now. I'm just saying, guys, I understand where the Ford camp is coming from. Must be nice, jaded. Because coming from the Mopar side, we're just going, we've had the same engine for forever. We've had the Hellcat engine for, what, now, 6 model years? Still is the benchmark standard if you want to go fast in a straight line, at least for the first 1,000 feet. But, and it's a big but, nothing new in terms of power plants. We can talk about the Red Eye, sure, okay. Well, the Red Eye's got the Hellcat beat. It doesn't. That was proven last Friday. So, not to say that it's a bad combination. I love me some Red Eye. It's just that there's some inefficiencies there that could be worked out. But it's still heavy. In fact, it's heavier than the Hellcat. Part of the reason why that delta is not so great. More inertial loss through the supercharger, higher discharge temperatures, and the like create a situation for tuning as well. So now we're back to talking about the Mach 1. I am stoked about this car, and I am watching out and waiting with bated breath to see these things start hitting the drag strip. Because I promise you they will. They're going to start hitting the drag strip, they're going to hit it in droves, and they're going to be laying down numbers that you 392 guys could only wish you could run. And the problem with that statement is that it pains me to say it. I feel like I just gave myself a shot. And it's going to make it to where the car puts half to 3/4 of a car on a 392 car every time they go down the track tire for tire. That is just enough, that's getting beat by just enough that whole shot victories kind of start to go away at that point. You put a car length on somebody, that eliminates a whole shot victory. I mean, we're talking you would have to be making a ham sandwich to lose that whole shot, or to lose that race even with a whole shot by your competitor. So there's your change right there. There's the difference. Anyway, let me get back to you guys. EG saying A10 GT versus A10 Mach 1. What's the difference there besides Ford installing an intake and tune for you for more cash? Well, there's a few things. One is you've got more power, and it's more power across the board with the revised tune. So the difference realistically could be at the end of a 1/4 mile, say a car length and a half. Okay, and let's just use that number as a jumping off part for a conversation. You might say, well, a car length and a half, that's not that much. It could be a little bit more than that, even if especially if it carries torque better down low, which it can with that intake manifold, with the revised tune. Certainly better up top where it counts, and at every gear shift, that 20 horsepower is going to be noticed. And in fact, at that power level, 20 horsepower is enough to put at least a solid car length, which means a solid couple of tenths. So when you think about it from that aspect, yeah, maybe they did just do that from the factory, and maybe it is going to cost you a little bit more, but it's already there. The basis is already recovered. You get the brand of the Mach 1. And on top of that, you might as well be asking the same question about a 1320 versus a Scat Pack Core. What's the difference? Well, probably pretty decent chunk and change, and not a whole lot in the 1/4 mile. but it's a little bit more of a special car. It's going to get a little bit more notice. But the big difference is going to come when you line them up stock for stock and you notice that the Mach 1 is faster. It's just going to be. And look, let's face it. Most of the guys going to the drag strip are not really modding their cars. I mean, they're modding them, but they're not modding them. You know, you don't see guys throwing superchargers or nitrous on 99% of these cars. At best, you'll see a tune, maybe long tubes, full exhaust, and if they're really super serial, they'll pull the passenger seat out. But that's about the extent. Most of them will go pretty good into the 11s at that point. It's just this one's going to be a little bit gooder, and I happen to like the way that they look, so there's also that to consider. If you're into manuals, it's got a better transmission. So, again, I get it, warmed over bullet, but that's not the point. Again, the point is the show. And at this point in the game, look, guys, for real, serious, you can't break out a double standard here. You can't say, well, it's just a warmed over bullet if you're a Ford guy, or if you're a Mopar guy, you certainly can't say that, because you've got that argument like shotgun scattered all over the Mopar community. I mean, what's the difference between a 1320 Scat Pack Core, Dynamics package, SRT? Have I missed anything? Shaker, TA. I'm running out of digits here. Y'all don't want to see my 21st digit. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, how many do I have to go through? How many do I have to count out before I get to the end of that on the Mopar side? And the fact that they did something kind of cool, raided a parts bin, and actually did something innovative with the Mustang, I'm jealous. Because we got nothing with the TA. We got some gadgets with the 1320. Dynamics package is just a dummied down SRT. You've got the SRT, the core, the wide body, shit. I mean, like I said, I'm going to start running out of things to count with. This is a cool thing that Ford did, and I think that given just a little bit of time, if you look at it for what it is, look, here's the thing. You take that car, put a tune on it, long tubes, cat back, 410 or 430 gear, whatever it is, with a manual transmission. You take the 355 out of it, put a 373 if it's an automatic, or just leave the 355 in. I don't know. Do whatever you want. Probably leave it in. Put a drag pack on it. And you've got a car that hauls ass and does everything great. Now, sure, can you do it better, cheaper, whatever with a Mustang? Yeah, especially if you pick up a used one. But that's not really the point. The idea is that there is something there's somebody being innovative here. And it ain't Dodge. I mean, they got a lot of fluff here. No pun intended with the weight on that, by the way. Oh, even saying this, of course, requires you to have a 5-liter. Everyone knows nowadays that a 2011-2020 Coyote with an 18 manifold, Cat Delete, and 85 puts buses on a Scat. Absolutely, and that's kind of my point. So you're just saying, hey, B, did you know that NASCAR is banning the Confederate flag? Yes, I did hear about that. If you come to me with the Confederate flag represents heritage, I will say that is a horrific argument for what that flag means to other folks, and that is the opinion that matters, not the heritage that proposes to represent. CJ saying Ford should have took the 5-liter Coyote V8 and bumped the power to 510 for the Mach 1. Would it be that easy? I mean, maybe it would. I mean, they took a GT350 intake and they popped it to 480. I mean, it's a pretty significant gain, especially when the car's already making a lot of power. And something to consider there, too, 20 horsepower, it sounds like it's not a lot, but when you've got brake-specific outputs that are as high as the 5-liter, where are you going to get another 20 horsepower? I mean, you at that point need to start looking at revving it higher, revised camshafts and everything else. Thing is that they had a Voodoo engine, higher displacement, higher RPM, and it was making 536. So it'd be kind of tough. You see where I'm going with that? I mean, at some point it's maxed out, you know. E.G. saying Shaker 2.0 is what we wanted. That would have been pretty cool. William saying your Type Mach 1 is a good car. What is holding back the Challenger is heft. Absolutely. Oh, well, you're right. Yeah. CJ saying, hey, Ethan, what do you think of the 5-liter Coyote V8 versus the almighty? Oh, yeah. TU saying, thanks for going live tonight, B. I have to get going, but we just disagree on the Mach 1. I'm not excited about it. Straight line potential, but I do admit I like the track potential of it. You know, yeah, I mean, it's, and I appreciate you, TU, too. I really do. You know, my thing is that I look at it from a little bit different point of view. I look at it from the point of view of somebody is doing something. There is a show going on out there. And the show is what I'm interested in. I like to see that procession. And I like to see the progression and the innovation. And, you know, I like to learn stuff. I like to see new stuff. And that's really where the Mustang keeps doing well. Don't get me wrong. Love the Hellcat. And the Hellcat is just, I just absolutely love that car. But the reality is when you start looking at the Hellcat, it only represents a very narrow-minded point of view of performance for a lot of guys. And keep in mind that there's guys that campaign Hellcats and Scat Packs, for that matter, on closed courses. So you do have that going for you, but the reality is that when you start to really break down what makes the Mustang special, when you start to break down what makes the Mach 1 special, it's that in some ways, the way that I see this is that in some ways, it's like they listened to the Mopar guy. All right, just bear with me on this. This is going to start to make sense, but you just got to, let's go for a ride real quick. They listened to the Mopar guy. The Mopar's guy is going, man, if I only had lighter weight. Man, I love my 8-speed automatic cars. They're quick, they're fast, they do a lot of good things, get good fuel economy. As a matter of fact, snappy to drive, the whole nine. If I just had something with a little bit more weight. I love 485 horsepower, man. Can't beat 480 odd horsepower. Automatic's great, but if I just had a little bit lighter weight car, how cool would that be? Man, that thing would be fast as shit. Well, guess what just showed up to the party, boys? Exactly what you were asking for. Lighter weight car, 480 horsepower, automatic. Available with a 355 gear, 10-speed automatic. Are you kidding me? This thing is looking better and better all the time. This is like literally getting what you're asking for, except it doesn't have the brand name that you've fallen in love with or the look that you've fallen in love with. You like the retro looks of the Challenger. Well, the Mustang is still a little bit retro in its own way, in a, you know, an impossible, you know, kind of a stretch, but SCCA circa 1970 sort of way. That's very cool. I mean, if you want retro, get a Jeep or a Porsche 911. But here's the twist. They're giving you not only exactly what you asked for, but they're taking it a step farther. You've got Ford Racing Performance parts that are already there to service whatever you might need, and you've got the revised tune to go along with it. Now, you already know that a set of long tubes in the 85 tune. That thing's already well on its way to putting down 500 to the rear wheels and embarrassing most things with a Mopar badge on. Now, granted, put a tune on the Mopar, wheel and tire setup, a little bit of weight reduction, and that advantage can go away. Keeping in mind that Shalandra never lost a race to an NA Mustang, except for once. Still a little butthurt over that one. But never did lose that race. But that's a little bit different story. That car ran good. Had one of my ported, well, not really ported. Well, eventually it got one of my ported intakes. But when it was running 1130s, it didn't have one of my ported intakes on it, just a little bit cleaned up. Still a little bit young in that process, by the way. But to that point, this is everything that you asked for, Mopar guy, and you've got the aftermarket to back you up on this. So how do you not jump on it? And again, from the Mopar point of view, this is just the show taking place. The problem is that we're watching the show over here instead of what's behind us and what we're driving back there. And if Dodge doesn't get their act together, then once again, the old adage that I've been talking about will start to remain the same, where we have every hot rod Mopar that you could ever dream to buy available for test drive at your local Ford dealership used car lot. Let's see. William saying Mach 1 is missing the shaker hood, but not the scat pack with the shaker option. Let's see. Harley saying lack of shaker doesn't discourage me. Keep in mind the original Mach 1's the shaker was just an option. It wasn't mandatory. William said the weight is what I see as a liability with a Challenger. Absolutely it is. Torque will overcome that, but so will gearing in a Mustang. AZ Independent saying if SP owners are going to bail, then they were never true enthusiasts to begin with and is bullshit. I sat and listened to you talk smack, but Dodge is producing the quickest NA and SC vehicles made. Okay, well, let's break that down. First of all, they were never true enthusiasts to begin with. Is that what you're saying? So if Scat Pack owners are going to bail, then they were never true enthusiasts to begin with. That's a bullshit statement. Let me explain to you how. First and foremost, an enthusiast, you're talking not enthusiast, you mean brand loyalist. And most enthusiasts are not brand loyal. They're enthusiastic about the car culture. And if it is too difficult, too expensive, or just too inconvenient to modify their Mopar, they are free to roam about and change brands at will. This is not a religion. If they're enthusiastic about the car culture themselves, that's part of the Mopar experience, which is paying the Mopar tax. Now, you say you sat and listened to me talk smack, but the Dodge is producing the quickest NA and supercharged vehicles made. You sure about that? Let's be honest with ourselves here. The 1320, yeah, it's quick for a stock car, but how many cars remain stock for any real length of time? And granted, am I one to talk? Yeah, I guess. I mean, considering that, you know, I drove the set the record for uncracked 392 at an 1120. Had the record for full weight SRT or Scat Pack core at all at one point at an 1130. Revlon, nobody has touched my 1019, 1017, and 1016 93 octane with a 309 gear. Basically, nobody's even come close to that in that respect. I think I should know a little something about which ones are the fastest, considering I've fucking bookended the record book on this, at least at one point. But now we've got the 1320 and somebody stripped one down to nothing and has gone 10s. And if you want to reference the Demon, yeah, that's nice. The Demon completely stripped down in ridiculous DA has managed to somehow or another go what? I think Ron Silva went 955 at my track rental, but the completely stripped down versions may have gone into the low 50s. That's cute. But the problem is that Ray went 978 in as delivered trim, and that's with me prepping his car. Oh, so I guess I'm part of that one too? Yeah, I know a little bit about how this works out. The issue here, by the way, that was a record, and then went 977 last year, which I think reset the as delivered record, at least at that time. The record's been a little bit liquid. Have you noticed something here? There's some consistency here with these numbers. Number one, they're nice and low. Number two, I'm involved with them. And number three, if you think that it's bullshit and that those numbers are impressive, let me remind you that those are more or less brand-related records. Because if you look at modified NA Mustang records, they're going deep into the tens. Camaro's NA will run 1050s, 1040s modified. I mean, at what point are you stopping the list of modification? Is it at camshaft? Does the cam even get involved with this, or does it have to keep the stock cam? Stock exhaust? You put out statements like that, but you don't qualify them. And the problem is how can you qualify them? It would take a freaking book to qualify them. That's why there's so many records flying around that nobody even cares about with these cars. Hey, listen, at this stage of the game, these micro records are turning into participation trophies. The size of this fly is amazing, by the way. Get out of here. So the point of it is this. You're talking about they weren't true brand loyalists? Well, let me ask you something. At what point is Mopar loyal to its customers? At what point is Mopar loyal to its grassroots racers? And I'm not talking about the 5.7, not to dismiss it. Keeping in mind that love me some Ram pickup, by the way. That's a 5.7. Matt's doing a hell of a job with that. So is Doc Diff. But here's the question that I have for you. Where is all this brand loyalty from the brand, from FCA, for the guys that are truly flying that NA flag? And that NA flag would rest solely on the shoulders of the 392. I'll answer this for you. There is none. And for years, I mean, as long as it has mattered to anybody. I mean, I remember 25 years ago, Ford Racing Performance Parts, special vehicle team stuff, whatever you wanted to buy, you could buy at your local Ford dealership. Mopar used to have direct connection. They don't have anything of the sort anymore, at least for the 392. They had the scat packages, I guess, for the 5.7. But even with that, that's limited. And to say the least, expensive. Now, granted, I get it. It comes with a warranty, but that's irrelevant because we're talking about a 392, not a 5.7. And the only NA combination that works against the Mustang or the Camaro comes in third place when it comes to modifying. So you want to talk about new stuff, that's fine. In fact, that's what I came here to talk about, was new. But when you want to start talking about enthusiasts, which you brought up, enthusiasts modify their cars. And when it comes to the modification game, it's a whole different world. Completely different world. So different that it makes you almost wonder what Mopar is going to do to combat it. Because see, here's the thing. Obviously, I fly the flag pretty high, have been for forever. I've owned 3 Vipers, Challenger, a Dodge truck, Hellcat. I'm starting to think I've put some of these FCA employees' kids through school. I bought so many Dodge products. But the reality is that it gets a little tiresome when you're driving those Dodge products and watching, especially if you're into roll racing, watching the taillights of brand X, Y, or Z trailing off into the sunset. Try explaining enthusiasm to that guy when he's getting his ass kicked by pretty much everything that he tries to roll up on in a roll race. LOL. CJ's saying, CJ's hanging out with Ethan. William's saying, why is tuning the Mustang so much easier than the Challenger? It's not so much that it's easier. It's actually a little bit more difficult, to be honest, because you start getting into cam timing and some other things with the Mustang, although you don't have to because the basic cam timing profile is pretty good. But the Mustang, you have to remember, is a dual fuel system. It has direct injection and rail injection, and that gives you a little bit more leeway with timing, and that does make a difference. Higher compression, not to mention a little bit left in the tank on that thing. I mean, you go with long tubes on that car, you're going to pick up. You can adjust, and it does adjust, exhaust and intake valves separately. So where there is a lot of overlap, those manifolds that it comes with aren't helping you at all. But you put a set of long tubes on it, it works great. It's basically like having a different set of cams in the car. It's pretty amazing stuff. So, but that's why they react so much differently to tuning, is that when you put the package together, you are basically within limits, infinitely varying and able to infinitely vary a camshaft. And again, the factory did a pretty good job. A lot of guys really don't get into the cam phasing too much with them because it's already pretty good. But there's a little bit of room in there, and that little bit of room can yield some pretty significant gains for sure. But the dual fuel system also helps that. Smoking a 5 saying FCA needs to make an aluminum block 392 that revs to 6,500, makes 5.25 horse, rear seat delete, lightweight bumpers, etc. That's less than 55 grand. I'll take that a step farther, man. I've been advocating on that aluminum block for the 392 for a long time, and they haven't started listening to me yet. But I will say this: I was rightfully bummed out when the 1320 was released with the iron block 392. I was actually waiting on a 1320 release date. The reason why, and I had been asking a buddy of mine that works at a Dodge dealership, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? When's it coming out? The main thing is I was hoping that there would be some type of a driveline upgrade, and unfortunately that didn't happen. And when that didn't happen, I was left kind of wanting here. I mean, I looked at it and thought, okay, well, you can get it with no seats. Okay, you can take the seats out of a Scat Pack core. No engine difference, but they also didn't offer any gearing change, which I thought was weird because they offered the gearing change with the Demon, and you can get a different gear in the Red Eye, but the Hellcat you can't because there's no performance difference anymore, right? Anyway, so I found all that to be really strange, and so when the car was released, I was left actually a little bit confused. I mean, what are you getting for your money? That was the hardest part for me in that entire exchange. When the 1320 was released, I didn't really understand it because there was nothing to tell you what kind of engine that you were going to get above and beyond the normal car. And aside from some gizmos and gadgets, it just wasn't there for me. When that car was released with no discernible power upgrade, say what you want about the suspension. I'm like, about the suspension. I mean, car's dead hook anyway. They go that way are really good. I mean, that part of it I'm not so concerned with. No power upgrade, no gearing upgrade, no reason, no motivation, no drive for me to want one. And that's what happened with me in that car. Let's see. CJ saying the 70s was known as the disco era, smog era. Yes, it was. Harley saying, would love to have me a 340 Duster. That would be sweet. Yes. In fact, I tried to find one, found one, and it was not in good shape. I was pretty bummed out about that. Like, really bad. William's asking, would you agree that the Mustang is targeted to the young drivers where the Chally is more oriented to the middle-aged drivers, hence the characteristics of the Challenger? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, the Challenger harkened, just with the retro styling, even though it's a bigger car, consider this, that the Challenger represents the last and the best of the muscle car era. Now, the Mustang does too. However, it doesn't necessarily fit the body type. In fact, of somebody, the typical 50, 60-year-old buyer for some of these cars. The Camaro missed the mark in terms of retro styling and grabbing a hold of nostalgia, but it did do well in terms of having a bit more of maybe a youthful look. But the Mustang, with the way that it looks now, is, to me, I mean, it has more youthful characteristics. The more angular type of a look, looks a little bit sharper, a little bit lighter on its feet. That's the type of stuff I like to see. And so the Camaro just looks a little bit plain, whereas the Mustang looks like she's ready to go out on a night on the town. And the Challenger just has that nostalgic look that kind of pulls on the heartstrings of a lot of guys that are maybe of a certain age or remember a certain era or are more inclined to romanticize that era from a muscle car standpoint. The Mustang doesn't really muscle car the way that the Challenger does. It's a different look, a different feel. Obviously, the Challenger's larger, more comfortable in some ways, many ways, and as a matter of fact. So, yeah, I think you're definitely onto something there, though, no doubt about it. BD78 saying the 5.0 has gone from 412 horse to about 500 horsepower, and 392 has only gone up 1 power increase. Mopar just doesn't give a fuck. They come up with a car and hope you'll like it for 15 years. That's kind of the problem. And actually, here's kind of a funny twist on that. So one of the statistics that rolls around is most folks keep their cars for a long time nowadays. Back in the muscle car era, you have to remember that cars were a lot cheaper then, not just in dollars and cents, but the percentage of your gross income, the cars were just represented a much smaller chunk of your money than the new cars do. Plus, you just didn't have other bills that you have now, like internet bills and telephone bills and, cable bills and, all that. You just had the automobile and that was it, right? Well, so and so people traded them all the time, and they were disposable playthings, toys. I mean, they weren't expected to last more than 3 people. Why would you? I mean, they just weren't built like that. So, but fast forward to today, back then they might have kept them for 3 or 4 years at the most. Nowadays, people keep their cars for 8, 9, 10, 11 years. The funny thing is that if you did buy one of these things in 2008, in the normal amount of time that you would keep your car, there was only been one significant update. And if you bought your car in 2015, you're not even to that date yet, that 6 to 7 to 8 year range. So if you look at it from that point of view, I guess we are kind of not really due for an update until 2023. But damn, Mustang just keeps doing cool stuff. And quite honestly, it makes it more exciting if you're into cars to pay attention to the Fords. Because they're always doing something kind of weird. And, weird's kind of good, especially when you've been staring at this old battle axe for as long as you have. I mean, don't get me wrong, she gets it done where it counts. And that's the best part of it. And I guess really when you boil it down, that's the main object, or at least the main topic of discussion when it comes to the Mopars. They really do get it done where it counts. But damn, if Ford didn't just start offering you up everything that you asked for, if she could only lose that, that 300 pounds, if you had the 480 horsepower, just lose the weight. Give me some gears. Make it upgradable. Oh, and by the way, let's not forget, once again, guys, this is important to note. Most of the Mopar guys, the new generation of Mopar guys, are not new Mopar. A lot of them are, but a lot of them aren't. These are old school Ford guys. Some old school Mopar guys. But most of them are old school Ford guys about my age that look a lot like me, that had the Fox body Mustangs, that had the New Edge Mustangs, that had the Lightnings, that had the GT 500s, that had the Vex, that had the Vipers. That's the era that these cars came from, and that's kind of the blend of vehicles that they had. The SRT-10 trucks kind of fall into that same thing too. We remember them. We were around for that era. We raced them. We put nitrous on them. We did a bunch of stupid stuff with those cars and trucks. But the reality is, we came from somewhere else to Mopar. Now, granted, I kind of had a Mopar background before I got into Dodge again. But the reality is that I learned how to do everything that I learned how to do to a Mustang, to Fords. And so I have Fords to thank for that. And it was just in 2008, guys, remember, it was only in 2008 when Mopar really showed back up on the scene for the everyman's hot rod. Make no mistake, the Viper wasn't everyman's hot rod. You had to be basically drawing in a pretty decent income to be able to afford one. I was just dumb enough to sink all the money I had into one, so I thought they were cool as shit and they're fast as hell, and that's what I liked. But the reality is that wasn't for everybody. That wasn't Dodge's Corvette. It couldn't compete with a Corvette. on several levels. But it had it beat where it counted, big ass engine, lots of horsepower, tons of torque. But the everyman car wasn't there. The two-door everyman car certainly wasn't there until the Challenger made it to the scene. And at that point, everything changed. That's when a lot of the Ford guys that wished they could have owned one of the Challengers back in the day, that wanted to have something cool like that, never could find one, never could afford one. And when I say couldn't find one, let's be honest, they were clapped out. They were disposable, dime a dozen cars in the 70s and 80s. They had 20 years of a pretty decent run of being run hard, put up wet, sold, rust buckets, the whole bit. It was only until about 25 or 30 years had passed that the romance of that car started to catch on. And the minute one person gets one, or the minute that Roadkill or whatever garage finds one and does something and stirs up a bunch of shit over that car, and everybody's got to have that. Never forget crop duster, that thing. I mean, dusters then became impossible to find. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. I was trying to find one at that point. So anyway, the idea here is that it was overwhelmingly difficult to have a Mopar in your garage. Couldn't find one that was decent. Direct connection had gone out the window a long time ago. And of course, you got to pay the Mopar tax. Everything's more expensive. So, fast forward to 2008. Everybody can have a Challenger again. A lot of Ford guys became Mopar guys. And it was only Mopar and Ford. And that was it. And so that's really where the difference lied. Is that you had kind of a pretty strong connection there on the Ford side. Chevrolet finally made it back to the party with the Camaro in 2010, but I mean, it almost seemed like they were always playing second fiddle, even when they were doing well. So, anyway, I digress. Let me get back to you guys. Let's see. CJ's asking, what would be a great engine swap for the 92-96 Ford F-150 Coyote? Ken797 saying, the all-wheel drive was an interesting idea that they seem to drop. Yeah, well, and guilty as charged here on that. I would have lost the farm, or at least a tractor or two. When the Demon was being released, I was going, oh, dude, that's got to be all-wheel drive. That would be so awesome. I mean, at least from a speculative point of view, that was a pretty killer idea. But yeah, they kind of dropped it. Maha is saying, is there a good upgrade kit for the HP70 now that I've added a bunch of power in front of it? Southern Hot Rods has got an upgrade kit for it, but it just depends on how much money you really are willing to throw at it. I think that transmission turnkey is around $5,000, which is pretty freaking steep. And I think you can find the swap. I don't even know what the HP90 swap is looking like these days. But do your homework on that. Take a look at what an HP90 swap would look like before you get into spending a bunch of money on an HP70 that, I mean, would never really do you a whole lot of good. When it's in built form, they're just harsh. Like significantly harsh. I mean, Southern Hot Rod may have changed some things up a little bit, but back a couple of years ago, I mean, you get these transmissions from them, and they were great transmissions, but damn if they wouldn't beat the living hell out of you. So, I mean, time and place, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. It was just always kind of tough working with those. Ernesto's my man Ernesto checking in, saying, what's up, E. Mason? Saying Vin specific, shake my head. I know it, right? We fought that battle together, didn't we? Shawnee's saying, not having a shaker on the new Mach 1 makes me not interested in getting it at all. It's a slightly warmed over GT as far as I'm concerned. Well, maybe, but again, you got to look at it from a little bit different standpoint. She starts to look a whole lot different in candlelight, trust me. The great liar of the evening is candlelight. CJ Colvin saying, also not to mention that the Ford Mustang has been outselling the Camaro and Challenger by a long stretch, indeed. William is saying, how about the exhaust note of a 5.0 Mach 1 in the 392 Hemi? Well, that is subjective, but I can tell you that it's the, I'll put it to you like this. I love the sound of the 392. I really do, provided it's got the right exhaust on it. They sound pretty good with a mid muffler delete. Love the sound of them with the stock exhaust at that. I mean, they just sound really good. 5.0 can get a little bit shrill, and they can get a little bit out of hand too. They can get a little bit loud, but I mean, you get those things up above about 6,000 RPM and they wail, which is pretty darn cool if you ask me. I like that. Yeah, but they both sound pretty good. And Shawnee's in agreement. TJ's asking, did you know that Dodge used to make the all-wheel drive RT Charger? Yes, they did. They made a few all-wheel drive cars, as a matter of fact. CJ prefers Fords. I like it. Let's see. William's saying, what about dealer markups on the Mach 1? We're not there yet. I'm sure there's going to be some, but again, I can't imagine that they're going to be there the way that they were the GT350 or the Bullet to a lesser extent. Mach 1 is just a Mach 1, and that's the other thing about that car is that I don't feel a connection to the Mach 1 the way that some would feel a connection to Carroll Shelby or to Steve McQueen with the Bullet. There's not a man behind that name with the Mach 1. It's just a Mach 1. And Mach 1's of, you know, it's Mach 1. So, I mean, if there's a dealer markup, you'd be like, why are you marking it up? There's nothing behind it. I mean, you're not paying royalties to anybody here. So there's that. I mean, what's the point of marking it up if it's a bunch of stock parts from other cars on this thing? Anyway, maybe they don't mark them up as much. That's the other side of it. CJ saying there's Mopar fans that are now becoming Ford fans. I'm going to improve upon that. I'm going to say there are Mopar fans that are now returning to Ford in some cases. Some Ferrari guys saying those A10 Mach 1s are going to be trapping near 120 in decent air. That's kind of my point, especially when you consider fifth gear. And Shawnee's saying an A10 GT will trap 120 in good air. The normal A10 GT is more like 118 is what some Ferrari guys saying. Look, 118, 120, potato, man. Look, it's fast as shit no matter what. It's got the highest trap mile an hour out of any of them. Let's look at it from this point of view. You're going to be looking at a car that in really good air is going to be trapping just south of what a stock Hellcat will trap. I'm going to let that one sink in for a minute. And understand that there's a lot more to unpack with that statement than just throwing out numbers. And I get that. And that can be a bit misleading. However, you need to consider one thing. And that is that the Mach 1 with the A10 has got the advantage with that 5-speed automatic, or the fifth gear in that 10-speed automatic that the Scat Pack just does not have. That tweener gear, because you have to remember, first through fourth are practically identical, with the only real difference between the two cars being the rear gear at that point, and the fact that the 5-liter makes less torque than the 392 by a significant margin, but not quite as significant as you may think, but it is still a very significant number. You take that into consideration, add the fact that it breathes better on the big end, mainly because of a better intake manifold, especially when you mix in that GT350 intake manifold, and throw a gear at it that's going to let it run with that 355, let it rev on the big end, and then hit it with the automatic with a fifth gear that keeps it in that power band. I've just taken a whole lot of time to lay out what it's going to look like when that thing puts about a car length on any given Scat Pack. That is what is going to happen. I feel like Liam Neeson here. You're going to get beat. You're going to need to know this coming into it. You run up against a Mach 1, it's easier to launch. Does a lot of things really good, and at that point where that thing starts to really shine on the big end, unless he's about 4 car lengths behind you, you're going to lose, and that's the problem here. That is at least the way that you would be told that that race is going to go. However, with my Challenger, with my 392, again, not stock, tuned, rear seat delete, with a no, try 5Rs, or with the drag pack. In fact, it was this exact drag pack that I run on the Hellcat. Tire for tire, I never lost a race to those cars. But let me explain to you what the race looked like. Don't get it twisted. It wasn't like I was just tearing away from it. Not at all. The way that it worked is I would put, light for light, I would put about 3 car lengths on them right off the bat. At about mid-track, they would start to reel me in a little bit. And by the end of the quarter mile, I would typically have about a fender on them, and they would just be coming around me like this. Weren't really reeling me in hard, but they were still reeling me in pretty good. Kind of like a lazy, like you're holding your beer, and you're just kind of reeling in some trash fish that you accidentally caught when you're just out, with your buddies. That's how they were reeling me in. Here's the thing though, they couldn't catch me. Had enough real estate to where they could have, they would have. But you know my take on that. My aunt had a package. It should be my uncle. They didn't, so they didn't. That was always a fun race though. And again, I did lose to one in a Mustang. Fit to be tied. But let's unpack that statement a little bit farther. Never lost except for one, but over time tuning got better, and then it got real good, and then the temps dropped again, and at that point a year had passed. I'd already run an 1120, I'd already run an 1130 in full weight, well on my way to being able to run an 11.0 or 11-teen. At that time that was going to be unheard of for that car. Well, Mustangs had already started running 10s. It's already out of the running. So again, going back to the comment about they're not brand loyal or whatever the case is, let me tell you something. The innovation and the tuning and the stick-to-itiveness was there. The cars just kept getting quicker and quicker and quicker. That's all there was to it. So after it was all said and done, had a lot of fun with that car. After seeing how durable and just how much fun these Hellcats were, I went this route. So let's see. Shawnee's saying, I watched stock automatic Mustang GT walk past my 6-speed 392 and trap 119 miles an hour on a tire at the drag strip. I trapped 113. Yep. William saying, I bet as far as drivability, I'll take the Challenger. Look, here's the thing. It's going to be more comfortable to drive just in general. If you are driving the car and using the car as an automobile, it is a more comfortable car to drive. It's a more comfortable car to be in. It's bigger, a little bit softer on the inside. It's just a bigger car. However, I will say this, and you Mustang guys will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. The Challenger is a bigger car, but it doesn't use its interior space as efficiently as the Mustang. So whereas the Challenger is bigger and the seats are a bit more comfortable, and the car rides a little nicer and all of that, all of those things, which although are subjective, are not wholly subjective. There is some objectivity there. But what is objective is the fact that again, the Mustang just utilizes what space it has better. And to that point, Challenger, seriously, how do you have rear seats that fold down that you can't fold down because they run into the seat and you can't fold them down? And you haven't fixed it. You haven't fixed it since 2008. What? Really? Anyway, I'm going to beat that dead horse. So Ferrari guy's saying the new Mach 1 will near pretty damn near close to the C8, just a tick or two behind. Very true. Alex is saying, Sub B, in the aftermarket, would you have to dump... Sub B, what in the aftermarket would you have to dump into a 392 NA to match or exceed the new Mach 1? Also, I'm impressed by your 392 cam I saw on RacerX's channel. How did it affect performance? Okay, a couple of things. What would you have to dump into a 392 NA to match or exceed the new Mach 1? Realistically, a tune, a rear seat delete, and Hellcat intake, Hellcat filter would get you where you need, and tire for tire, so we need to put drag pack on it. that'll get you basically where you need to be in terms of just getting from point A to point B at the drag strip. That'll put you solidly in the middle 11s. The issue here is you have to remember that it's bookending the experience. You know that coming into this, you're going to be on one side of that bookend. The high torque, lots of mid-range power, but still kind of heavy and as aerodynamic as a freaking bus. So the back half of the track is not your backyard. You're gonna basically rule the roost for about the first 800 to 900 feet of that track. After that, you're done. You're gonna be abdicating to the less torque, less horsepower, but lighter and higher winding Mustang. That's where it really starts to shine. So I'm not going to say that you can equal that Mustang. Now, if you want to say, well, how do I beat it on the freeway? Then it's going to be long tubes, camshaft, ported manifold, 84 millimeter throttle body, obviously the tune that comes with all of that as well. Maybe even a conversion to E85 at that point, although not necessarily necessary, but you know, it can help. But that's what you're gonna have to do to mess with it on the freeway. That car that you saw in that video too, that is a camshaft. Actually, the camshaft that's in his car is the camshaft that I had designed for my personal car, Shalandra. The camshaft was designed the way that it was designed because I didn't want, okay, so when I worked for Pikes, I was around cammed cars a lot. But you've got to remember something. When I was there, whenever I would load test a car, get the initial data on the car, I might as well be wearing a white lab coat. It's not like I'm out joyriding in these things. I've got my laptop with me. I've got everything hooked up and I'm watching data. And keep in mind, no matter if it made 300 horsepower or 1,300 horsepower, I was driving it. I could be driving it at the drag strip. I could be getting data, adjusting transmission shift points. I could be street testing it, doing roll-ons. You know, basically, okay, downshift, hit, watching load, watching knock retard, making sure nothing stupid's going on. Looking at shift points, which is seemingly a big part of what I did throughout the course of these types of sessions. But again, it's just wide open throttle, high load, low speed, wide open throttle, high load, high speed, partial throttle, high load. And you just kind of go through this checklist. And after a while, I liken it to this. Everybody goes, oh, that must have been so much fun. That ought to be awesome. This is how I describe it. It was pretty cool. But it's like being a gynecologist. You may love something to death, like just be all up into it. Like I dig that stuff a lot. Like I can go for some at pretty much any given time. Just awesome. I love it. But if you're around it and you're seeing it every day and you're dealing with issues with it all the time, oh yeah, that's an exhaust leak. Oh yeah, it's got knock retard. It's got too much false knock. What's up with one of the knock sensors? Is that an exhaust leak? Oh my God, is that the Hemi tick? Oh my God, is that a lifter? Did it eat a lifter? It's on the dyno. Did I blow it up? Oh shit, I'm doing 196 miles an hour. That's not a good idea. Oh my goodness, why am I going sideways at 146 miles an hour? Why is it breaking the tires loose so easily? Is the true track broken? All of these things are happening multiple times a day. It just becomes part of the job. It's not really exciting. It's not really fun. It is fun. It's kind of cool, but it can be a lot more annoying. So I say all of that to paint a picture. And when it came to the cammed cars, there was just like the Comp 270 was just kind of a dog down low. It maybe had good power somewhere up top, but I was so bored with it. I was going. Comp 274 was even worse. This is you can get them through MMX, where most guys were getting them back then. So I started looking at what worked, and been obviously into engines forever, and I'd spec cams before. It wasn't my first time doing this, but the math behind it, the theory behind it, and all that, I just like, I just put a cam together that I know will work. And number two, got to keep in mind, I work for a tuning shop. It has to be easy to tune. Didn't care about it chopping or anything like that. In fact, that was the last thing I wanted it to do. I just wanted it to have real good tip-in throttle response. That's it. That's all I cared about. So I put that cam together, and then we had a customer that wanted something that made more power, so I actually put another cam together that went into a manual transmission car. It would have been great in an automatic. It just would have needed a converter to really act right. Those are both available through Pipes Performance. I also put them together for Dock Differential as well. So, it gets you a cam. That's pretty easy. But that's where that cam came from. And so on the highway, that car that you saw, I know I'm taking forever, but that car that you saw with that cam, Rob's Charger, weighs about as much as a Sherman tank. Rob is no small guy either. And so that kind of exacerbates the thing. That car basically is like 4650 or 4750 with him in it. Walked around a GT 350R on the highway. At 80 miles an hour, they made a hit, and they just transposed positions. By the time it was said and done, the car walked around a GT 350R. That'll give you an idea for what it runs like on the street. Now, that's pretty damn good. All things considered, it would have never done that before. Now, a lot of folks have criticized that cam about the numbers that it put down. And look, if you understand where you're already starting from with the 392, which is a very high level, and then you take that 392, put a really solid tune on it, long tube headers, aftermarket cat back, Hellcat filter, the whole bit, basically set it up to where it's already maxed out with a stock cam. There's only so much overhead that you have with a camshaft before it starts to run like shit. And keeping in mind that the vehicle is heavy, and it's got to be able to drag its heavy ass out of the hole and go down a drag strip also, because Rob likes to drag race the car. So there is a little bit of a trade-off, but if you notice in that video, you'll see the pulls. Even when they drag the thing all the way down to 2,500 RPM, that cam still makes power all the way across the board no matter what. And that's just a function of the fact that when I put that cam together, again, I literally designed it for me, and I wanted a cam that made power everywhere, but with the caveat that I wanted it to be easier to tune. I didn't want to have something that was going to act stupid. That was the last thing I wanted, because keep in mind, I drive really fast cars every single day of my life, especially when I work there. I'm not worried about it loping. I'm not worried about it being quote unquote faster if I'm going to lose and give up everything that makes a 392 so awesome, which is all of that awesome tip-in torque and throttle response down low. If you lose that, which a lot of the cams did that I was around, then the essence of the Mopar experience gets completely wiped off, and you're left with this experience with the car. That cam, on the other hand, real sharp, real fresh cam, and it keeps your attention, and it pulls very strong all the way out the back door. Are there cams that can make more power? Yeah, I mean, I've designed them. I know how to do that. That's not the question. The question is that power is a misnomer, because yeah, it makes more power in one area, but if it doesn't make power across the board, or if it's sluggish at partial throttle, that's the other thing. You can make power across the board, but if it's sluggish at partial throttle and you lose that tip-in, snappy throttle response, that's a fail in my book. Remember, performance means something different to everybody. But if you have a profile that gives you more everywhere, then you're getting more performance everywhere, which means you satisfy everything. It is a compromise, but is the strongest compromise that you can find out there. So I put that cam together, and it was a hit. In fact, we sold a bunch of them. And it's kind of an interesting cam too, by the way, because that was just leading into the whole 220, 230 craze with the Hemis, where that's the valve events somewhere around there, like 218, 228, 200, 220, 230. A lot of people started finding that through trial and error, that cam profile or those cam events started to work out. The big difference with my cam is it is not an NSR cam. Those are some aggressive lobes in that card to get it to act like that. Real aggressive lobes on the intake side to make it act like it's a little bit more advanced. There's a lot of stuff going on in that cam. It's not just, it's a cam. Put about 2 weeks into that cam, back and forth with comp cams, going over different lobe profiles, making sure, okay, spring pressure, spring rates, what lifters will work, the whole bit. I mean, you don't have to have Johnsons for it, but they're pretty aggressive, so. Anyway, that'll give you an idea, though, for a little bit of the backstory on that cam. Shawnee's saying, let's see the Mach 1 in person and price point. Maybe it'll be worth it to go over a regular GT. And they're talking about 50 grand. There's some GTs that eclipse that number. Let's see. CJ, we're not ever even going to talk about that. Alex is saying, also, what does the Edelbrock Victor intake do to 392's performance? So what it does is it's a very, how do I put this? It's a very good version of the 6.1 intake. If I were to say that the Edelbrock is better than the 6.1 intake, it would be a marginal statement, especially if you consider extrude honing the 6.1. That might get you a little bit of a gain that would be better than the Edelbrock. But the reality here is that, look, yes, the Edelbrock is good. It does get hot, though. That's the thing. It's just this huge aluminum heat sink up there. And if you put a cam together that works with that intake specifically, you can rest assured that it will make good power. The problem is, I don't like the intake for street cars. They get too hot. They don't have the wide range that the stock 6.4 manifold has. They work fairly well in that, maybe from a boost standpoint, to me, it's a complete freaking waste. I'm trying to find some good here, but every time I've worked with that intake manifold, there's been some kind of hitch, some kind of reason why I just wouldn't ever really want to go back to it. And part of that was they don't develop very good torque down low. They do very well in the mid-range and kind of do okay on the top end. And that's what the 6.1 does. And the 6.1's a prettier intake. You don't have to get all the rails and everything else that you do with that intake. My challenge to the aftermarket when it comes to Mopar stuff is, where is MSD or FAST for the Hemi guys? I mean, this should be a flipping no-brainer. The Hemi is actually an intake manifold, a properly designed intake manifold. I would love to get with these guys and design one for them if they need it done. I don't think they need my help, but the reality is I've got one in mind that would, I think, do really well. The problem, though, is, this is so annoying. The problem is that in a vacuum, in other words, separated from the platform that it's installed in, I can put an intake together that will bump power on a 392 with a cam, long tube exhaust. I could easily put one over 600 horsepower. It'd be pretty simple to do, actually. 6 1/4 horse would actually be almost accidental with some of the intakes that I would consider for that car. the problem is that you lose all the power down low. And the reality is that you need to have the power down low to get these tanks moving. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, you know, what are my thoughts on the Edelbrock intake? It's not what I would have designed. It's not what I would have installed on a car. And I mean, yeah, for a stroker motor, they may do pretty well. But even with an extrude hone, I mean, shit, I would probably still look at the Holly. I mean, the Holly is still a short runner intake. I mean, it wouldn't hurt it really to have that intake on it down low, because you know, if you're running a 426 or a 440, that's kind of the way I would go. But I mean, I think that they're just leaving so much on the table. But anyway, not necessarily my cup of tea, but some folks like it. Oh yeah, and they're heavy too. Rob Zilla is asking, what was your setup for the 11.3? It was full weight, rear seat delete, Mopar rear seat delete, SRT wheels, so 20s all the way around, Nitto Tri-5Rs, 305, 35, 20s in the rear, Hellcat intake, Hellcat intake box, I should say, Hellcat air filter, Pikes Performance engine tune, B Mason trans tune. That was the setup for it. And I had cleaned up some of the casting flash out of the runners, but the intake was not ported. William's asking, how much is too much horsepower for the street? I don't know that there's a solid answer for that. That's a power to weight ratio question, really, more than it is horsepower. But for these things, I start getting a little bit annoyed with the cars right around that 700 to 800 horsepower to the rear wheels in Challengers is about the point where I start to just, they get annoying. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you another example. I had a vet, a Z06 that would do this also, especially with street tires. So it depends on what tire you're running too. When they start to wall hunt at 70 miles an hour, in other words, your correction isn't just, you know, you light the tires up and you got a little bit of correction like that. That's fairly par for the course with some of the higher horsepower cars. But when you're making solid, you know, 180 degree variances and feathering the throttle at 75, 85, 90 miles an hour, that can get a little bit annoying because I can't get solid data out of it, because I'm constantly making directions in a loaded / unloaded situation. I know when you've done it over and 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 over again on purpose, it's not that scary when it happens on accident or when it happens when you least expect it, unless it happens when you least expect it in a violent way, which my Z06 had a nasty habit of doing. So thanks. But anyway, getting back to it, that's about the time where tire technology just doesn't keep up with the power, and that's when the car becomes a bit unbalanced. It's at about that 9, for the Hellcats, it's somewhere around the 950 range at full weight, like Racer X's car, is about the limit that I would say, yeah, it's just not fun anymore. It's way past tire technology at that point. Fast, don't get me wrong, and everything is fun once you're going above 135, 145 miles an hour, but it's just not, it's more work than it is rewarding, and that's kind of a tough position to be in, because at that point, it only starts to make sense and it only really starts to work well on the drag strip. Again, outside of that environment, it's annoying and you can't use any of the power. I mean, let's be honest, it's tough to use all the power out of a Hellcat to begin with. And you start throwing power at it from there. And then, you know, potential reliability issues come into play. So it depends on the car, but you know, Mustangs are fun at about the 550 to 600 horsepower range, the rear wheels. They're a lot of fun with a Pro Charger because those things are a flipping riot. I say that I should have been wearing a lab coat. The cars that will The cars that will make you a bit jaded are, like when I work for Pikes, would be a Pikes Performance Bravo package on E85 will change your idea as far as what a fast street car is. It will completely reevaluate your assessment of what fast is. The Pro Chargers on 5-liter Mustangs will get your attention in a neat way, because they start off, they go, yeah, and the faster you go, the harder it pushes you into that seat. Those are a lot of fun to drive, and will also redefine your idea of fast. So will a Pro Charged Vet. Pro Charged Corvettes are kind of they're a lot of fun, because when they hit the mid range, they have the feel and the drive and the torque of a big block. When they start really making, say 6-8 pounds of boost, it's like nah. But when they start making 12, 14, 16, 18 pounds of boost, that's when things get real interesting. So anyway, and then you get them up into the 18, 20 pounds of boost, and things get real interesting. Let's see, CJ's saying there's a couple of videos of modern red Hemis, 5.7 Hemi V8 RT Shaker taking on a couple of Mustangs. Okay. Let's see, AZ Independent saying everybody was putting out crap in the late 70s and 80s and would rather not have had them built a Challenger at all than to make a piece of shit Pinto, and are full of it. Well, actually, when you say everybody was putting out crap in the late 70s, that's kind of what I was talking about. Remember that the fastest car out of America in the 70s, at least at one point, was a truck. It was a Little Red Express. In the 80s, it's a different story. I mean, there's a lot of actually pretty cool cars in the 80s. But fantailing something with LOL doesn't emphasize your point. It actually dumbs it down a little bit, because you're dismissing actually a really neat time in the automotive world. That's when direct connection existed. They existed at that point to help you with your Aspen, make it fast. I mean, help you with your CUDA to make it fast as well. Chevy Performance did the same thing. Now, granted, there was some pretty lousy smog era stuff, but again, that was really more political than anything else. That was on the heels of an oil embargo, and obviously the import scene, at least in terms of economy cars, was in full stride at that point. So, and you say piece of shit Pinto, the problem with those types of cars is that was never considered to be a performance car. But you get into the disco era of Trans Ams, and you look at, you say 70s and 80s, late 70s and 80s, some of the most iconic cars of that era, and now some of the most valuable cars come from that era, especially when you start to look at the Pontiacs. So yeah, it was a step backwards in terms of any of the automotive industry. I mean, you cannot deny that. But if it weren't for that era and some of the innovation that came from that era, namely fuel injection, big part of that, computerized fuel injection, I should say, we wouldn't be where we are now. So those tough times had to happen. But yeah, I wouldn't discount a lot of those 70s and 80s cars, especially considering the fact that the Grand National came from that time frame as well. And those late 70s and 80s cars also bled into the early 90s, where you started to see cars like the ZL1 show up. You started to see things like the Cyclone and the Typhoon start to open up because of the innovations that took place in the 70s and 80s. The things that really started to capture the imagination of folks that would carry them into the 90s and the early 2000s. That's where things really got interesting. And to be honest with you, from a POS standpoint, LOL, nothing got interesting until 1999. And in 1999, the Lightning was released. And that is the genesis of all of the modern excess that we have today. Far before the Terminator Cobra. And in the spirit of the Typhoon, the Cyclone, the Grand National, the GLH, Omnis, the Turbo Daytonas, the cars that would have taken the place of the muscle car, those hot hatch cars, those types of cars. In that same spirit, brought out something that was absolutely unheard of unless you were around in the 70s. That loophole vehicle, that hot rod, in this case now supercharged truck that was showing its taillights to a lot of cars that trucks hadn't been able to show its taillights to, well, basically since that Little Red Express. Let's see, guys. Hang on just a second. Let me see if I can catch up here. Let's see. Hang on. Got a lot of ground to cover. Hang on. Here we go. Okay. Let's see. Robzilla's asking 392 versus C7 Stingray. Guys, I love me some Corvette. I'm a two-time recovering Corvette owner. I will say this. Don't like the C7 Stingray at all. Love the Z06. Love the Grand Sport. Hate the Stingray. Going with the 392 on this one. Shotty saying, B, sounds like you're thinking about a Mach 1 might cut into 392 sales. I'm starting to agree with you. A lot of folks are thinking about that, by the way. CJ saying, of course, Ford is bringing back the pushrod V8 for their 2020 Ford Super Duty. Yes, they are. AZ saying, this guy is definitely a fair weather fan. You got to stick around the channel a little bit longer to start having those types of opinions, because if you did, you know that's not a true statement. Anthony Strick saying the things that are being done with the Rams are insane. I kind of think I should have looked for a short bed. I don't know, man. I like long beds. Long beds are kind of cool. Let's see. Oh, AZ is talking about the as heavy as they are, the 1320 being the quickest production vehicle. Yeah, you know, that's kind of in the same guise as the Demon is the quickest production vehicle made today, not the 1320. I think you're thinking NA. Yeah, again, I mean, believe whatever four-wheel Jesus you want to believe, man. How many 1320s do you own? Do you own one? I mean, I'd love to hear about your experience with it. That's, I think, not the first time you've referenced the NA side of it. Again, I was going as quick as a stock 1320 with a SRT. So, with a 1320, whatever. And you're saying I'm a fair weather fan. Do you not see what I got going on behind me, dude? Yeah, like I say, you haven't been around the channel long enough. I think you got the wrong impression. Junior checking in. Hey, B Mason, what's up, Junior? Steven saying Camaro is way too bumpy. Challenger ride is 100% better. Yeah, I can't even compare it to a Camaro. William saying, Mason, you're very poignant, knowledgeable. It's a pleasure to listen to your perspective. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. However, I'm going to keep my Scat Pack 392 with shaker option. And it's torque red. So here's the thing. I wouldn't talk anybody out of keeping their Mopars. That's really not the overall value of this. The overall value that I hope that folks get from the conversation is, look, Ford's doing something different. We need to pay attention to that. If Mopar is going to keep all of us in the game, we can't have somebody go down, buy this Mach 1, put a drag pack on it, and start immediately showing its taillights to everybody. We got to find out what's going on. And again, for a lot of guys, that came from Ford and are now into Mopars. Yeah, great. But, you know, last I checked, a lot of these Mopar guys are ex-Ford guys. And what does that make them, AZ, by the way, since you seem to be an expert in this whole, you know, family thing that you're leaning on, at least that's the way you're coming across. Maybe they should have stayed with Ford and not bought Dodge. Maybe all the Ford guys should have stayed with Ford and not bought Dodge. And if that would have been the case, then all of these Mopars would have gone the way of the Magnum, which is to say extinct. See, if you didn't have converts, you wouldn't have a congregation. And the issue that you're running into is I think you're a little bit short-sighted. I think that when the Mopar guy wants to be part of a Mopar community, a community that really doesn't even allow anything other than stock in the conversation. Have you ever been around some of these forums, by the way? And there's a reason why I don't get into forums. It's also a reason why I don't do Facebook anymore. Yeah, it's a little bit funny, the echo chamber that the Mopar community is, whereas the Fords, not so much. Whenever you start preaching and let's just say you've hitched a ride on that train and you start subscribing to that echo chamber, that's when you start to lose races and you start to get frustrated. It's because you're not paying attention to what the competition is doing. And in this case, competition might be walking right past you. So you're just saying, hey, B-Mace, how's the 72 GMC C25 going? What's the plan for the 5.3 LS once you've swapped it into the GMC? I'm still waffling on that a little bit. But old Sierra, she's doing good. We'll probably within the next 30 days or so be taking it over to Doc Diff. He's going to get a little bit of work done for me that I just don't have the tools to do. From there, we're going to see. It's got a 400 small block Chevy in it right now. To swap it over to LS, still a bit on the fence with that. It might be fun to do a 400 small block Chevy build on it, set of AFR heads, one of my cams, air gap intake, pick a 4-barrel, it really doesn't matter. With 430 gears that are already in it and a 700 R4 that's built, that thing would do burnouts for distance. Throw 150 shot on it, call it good. Or at least, maybe not 150 shot, just throw 100 shot on it just to have, you know, just to be able to play with a purge and, you know, just tag it for fun. That would be about the extent of it. And it'll be a lot of fun. But man, I'll tell you what, so I just did the cab mounts, which was kind of fun. So I'm learning a lot of things about, let me rephrase this. I'm relearning a lot of things that I had learned and had to learn or picked up on when I was a kid. But there's some other more detailed things that I'm learning about carburetors and just the old school stuff that I just haven't been around in forever. And although it's kind of neat, it's just not as neat as the new stuff. It's not as easy to play with as the new stuff. And what's funny is you would think that there's some, I'm having to deal, first of all, you think that these parts, again, are just like you trip over them on your way to the mailbox. It doesn't work like that. Not with SBC stuff. It's not quite as cheap as you would think that it would be, but the big portion of this is the LS swap stuff isn't quite as cheap or appealing as you might think either. And so if it does get an LS swap, it'll get one of my cams. It's probably going to be just a run-of-the-mill 224, 228. Intake center line of about 107, just to give it a little bit of down-low torque. That's why I would go with 224, just to drag it around a little bit more on the intake side. 113-degree lobe separation, nothing crazy, nothing nutty, just, you know, a 580, 590 lift cam, something like that. You know, keep the truck intake, keep the stock heads, BTR 650 springs, and just call it good at that point. I mean, that would be the combination. Instead of swap headers, it doesn't matter as long as it's a tube and it exits exhaust. That's all I care about for that truck. So a couple of flow met. So I do have the mid-length headers on the way. Oh, I forgot to mention that. So tubular motor mounts are on the way. The mid-length headers are on the way. And I got to put the new fan in it, and then it'll be basically ready to drag it over to Doc Diff. I just got to get him taken care of on the trans parts. So, but the leaf springs are in, the hardware's in. Not going to put a 4-barrel on it yet. So the reason why I'm not going to put the 4-barrel on it, unless one just falls out of the sky, right, is the cam is non-existent in these old small block Chevys. They're just small lift, low duration. It's practically not even worth putting a cam in it with the heads that are on it. So if it gets a cam, it's just going to be cam, timing chain, heads, cam, intake, carburetor, and that'll be it. So, but we'll see about that. I just have to weigh the options at that point, because at that point it would, do I save that money and put it towards the LS swap, or do I just go heads, cam, intake on a 406, bore it out, make it a 406, RPM heads, RPM air gap intake, 650 or 750 carb with the 1 3/4 inch mid length. I mean, shit, that's a 470 horsepower engine, 450 at least. And then with FEAD and everything else, that'll drop it down to like a 410 horse. That would be a lot of fun. And with 430 gears and a truck that weighs 4,300 pounds, that thing would be a riot. I mean, it'd just be a tire for riot, especially with a built 700 R4. But we got to get it roadworthy now, and that's the idea: is to get the truck roadworthy and then start having fun with it after that. CJ's asking, what's wrong with the retro look with some modern performance? Nothing at all. It's just, younger crowds don't necessarily want the same car that their dads or granddads had. Machine's asking, do you think the red-eye Charger is a thing? Steady waiting for that. If not, I'm going to go for a C7ZR1. Go for the C7ZR1. You'll be a lot happier with that car. If you're considering that or the red-eye Charger, I would say just go with the ZR1. But, we'll see how that plays out. Let me see something here. Ethan thinks AZ Independent apparently is a know-it-all. Apparently we have a celebrity genius on here. Everybody say hi to AZ Independent, because man, he's just calling Ethan Ag, what a fitting name. That's cute, AZ. Let's see. CJ's saying, if you're to choose an F-150, which engine with a 5-liter? I wouldn't even bother with a V6 turbo. Harley Ed saying, I'm sorry, but when Mopar put 4 doors on a Charger, I lost all interest. A lot of people had that same response. That being said, though, the concept car that the Charger was based on was a 4-door, but it was one of those hidden, like, coupe 4-doors, and it did really well in testing. Ethan's saying, I always wondered this back when I had my 14392, was it possible to swap in the 8-speed? I'm not going to say it's not possible, but it wouldn't be feasible. You would have more of a pain in the ass trying to do that than just trading it in on an 8-speed car. Let's see. Alex is saying, gotta say, I wouldn't have bought a Challenger if not for the comfort and the sweet look. The performance and weight is just lagging these days. Well, and that's the thing. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be about a number. And let's get something straight here. These cars are capable of running 11-second quarter-mile times, regardless of which one you get. You get 1320, Scat Pack Core. We're talking about the Challengers here. It's a little bit lighter. Scat Pack Core, TA, what have you. You put them on a drag pack wheel and tire setup, the same type of setup you'd have seen back in the heyday of these muscle cars. Same type of an idea, right? Something that's going to be safe for the drag strip, and again, it's going to dead hook to where you're not, wasting your time. Because you will be wasting your time if you go out there on street tires. In fact, don't do it. Anyway, you go out there, you're going to be running 12.0, 12.1, or 11.9 in really good air. That is unimaginably fast. So, I think in this era that we're living in, it's hard to get excited, unfortunately, about an 11-second car. It's like the 1320. They were touting 1170s, and most people went 1150s. And I'm looking at that going, well, shit, I could probably put one of my tunes on that car, do some weight reduction, and probably put it solidly, if not in the 10s, in, say, 1,500 foot DA, because I don't think you'd get there. I was thinking, well, shit, I could probably put one of those 1320s somewhere in the low 11s. And I thought, well, shit, I've already done that with a Scat Pack Core. So, my SRT went 1130s. What gives? And then you started seeing guys, this is where shit got stupid. You started seeing guys take those cars and absolutely gut them. They did this with the Demons too, and this is what turned a lot of people off. And one of the reasons why Legion of Demons might, after this past last year, where you had people that were just gutting, stripping every little thing out of the car, door cards, speakers, shit everywhere. Like I said, you walk up to the car and it was, it's red on the outside, red on the inside because they tore all the carpet out. There was no sound. Everything. It's like, dude, that goes against the spirit. Anyway, it goes against the spirit of what the whole event was for, was to get this, as delivered car to go a 965. And Ray went 978, 200-pound guy in negative 1,300 conditions. Correct for weight, correct for whatever, it's actually a little bit fast. Anyway, it doesn't matter. When you started to get into that, one of the issues that had come up was, well, at what point is it really still a car? And I think somebody had gutted a 1320, put a tune on it, long tubes, a couple other things, but just gutted the piss out of the thing. I think they got it into the 10s, which makes sense. It should go into the 10s if that's everything that was done to it, considering the weight that they pulled out of it. But at what point is it just not the car anymore? You guys have heard me talk about this before. If you're gutting it to that level, if you're taking it to that extreme, would you have bought the car if it looked like that at the dealership? Like, seriously, you would walk up to this gutted shell of a car and go, oh yeah, I want that. I want that thing with no carpet in it, that I can see the paint on the inside and no headliner. And it's got one speaker left in it, but we're going to take that one out too. Anyway, that's the kind of the condition that these things were showing up in. And that's when I said, look, if that's the game y'all are playing, if that's really the game that you're playing, just step aside with that sideshow shit. I see that and I go, that's stupid. It goes, I understand it, but just because I understand something doesn't mean that I condone it. And just because I understand something doesn't mean that I don't think it's fucking ridiculous. So for me, seeing the cars stripped down to that level, whether it's a Mustang, a Challenger, or whatever, it doesn't matter. At that point, it's a race car. And the very first car I ever started to learn how to tune, this is way back in the day, was on Apex. And it was with imports. It was an Integra. It was a Civic. No, sorry, it was an Integra. The very first car was an Integra. The second car that I actually really got to play with was a Civic with an Integra engine, both of them turbo cars. Stripped out cage, slicks up front, skinnies in the back, and for street duty it was drag radials up front. That's what your old ball buddy Brian learned how to play with tuning, and back then it wasn't near as sophisticated as it is now. I mean, if the map sensor would cover your manifold pressure, then you were good. Anyway, getting back to it. Boosted Emmy saying, traded my Scat Pack for a 2017 Hellcat. Nice. Has a lower pulley and a tune. It's never been in the rain. Very nice. Sounds like my car, as a matter of fact. I don't think my trunk was never open. I still think to this day. Shawnee's saying, welcome to the Hellcat Club. And yes, welcome to the Hellcat Club, my friend. CJ's saying, the sound of a 392 Hemi V8 in my dad's 2019 Scat Pack Charger sounds badass. Hell yeah, I love that. Hector's saying, I'll keep my Scat Pack because my father helped me co-sign, so it has a bit of family connection now, but I'll definitely buy the Mach 1. Take a look at it. Just get an idea for it. Understand what's going on with it. Again, I wouldn't tell anybody, look, you got to trade in your Scat Pack for this Mach 1. Not even saying that. What I'm saying is, just know that before with the GT350, you had bookends. And I've driven some GT350s. By the way, I love those cars. But you had a bookend of driving experience. And with the GT350 versus the 392, there was really no middle ground. I mean, the Camaro tried to get there, but that triangle went down. Mach 1 kind of goes up a little bit. In other words, that gap is definitely shorter in between the experience. CJ Colvin's wishing for a Coyote-powered sedan. That'd be kind of cool. Hector's saying, oh, Hector's hanging out with CJ right now. Let's see. Oh, Junior's saying it's cool to see Mustang vets own Mopars and vice versa, the best of both worlds. Most of us are all integrated. We're inter-branded with most of this. You know, I learned, you know, my grandfather taught me how to drive in a Dodge truck, taught me how to drift in a Dodge truck when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. Pretty cool childhood with my granddad. Race stock cars, NASCAR before it was NASCAR. But, you know, had, you know, so all of us, you know, especially on the Mopar camp, there's a lot more, you know, like I say, just, you know, cross-breeding there with us, cross-pollination there. When you get into Chevrolet, here's the funny thing about Chevy. What's funny is that rarely do Chevy guys branch out. The Chevy family tree doesn't do this. It just kind of goes straight up for a lot of guys, and for a lot of good reasons. I mean, there's no reason to branch away. They're very consistent, very, you know, parts interchangeability, even through engine family, is very, very diverse in that own area, so that's a good thing. Problem with Chevrolet is that it's like you're working for the man almost, you know, when it comes to Chevrolet. Whereas Ford was always very innovative, and Dodge was just, you catch Dodge hanging out at the beach with a dime bag. I mean, it was just, that's the way Dodge stuff was, right? So, but Chevy was always, you know, buzz cut, you know, and they're great. They make a ton of power, and, you know, the Mark III big block was supposed to knock the Hemi off of its pedestal, and it stuck around forever, and it used it in trucks and cars and race and tow and everything. Their engines do a lot of things, and again, the parts interchangeability is amazing on those engines. But the issue was always they were cool. Some were cool, I should say. You know, some Chevelles are cool. Camaros are cool, but it was always very, I don't know, always felt like Chevrolet was just so regimented and just square. I don't know. Just my thoughts on it. And now I own one. Technically two, Camaro and my truck. Even saying, any hope of Challenger RT57 getting near a 5.0? Man, no, not really. I mean, you don't get me wrong. You can make them faster than the 5.0. As a matter of fact, I mean, if you own one, then yeah, of course you can. You can go E4 supercharger or cam, ported intake, hit it with a shot of dope. I mean, there's ways to get that 5.7 to run good. But you're going to be looking at a significant investment. So just know that coming into it. Let's see. CJ's hanging out with Hector. Let's see. Have you seen Motor Tube's Hellcat walk the C7? No, haven't seen that. Jay saying, I'm working tonight. Just wanted to chime in and say, what's up, B? What's up, Jay? Good seeing you, man. Let's see. CJ's talking about the 5.7. Let's see. Oh, Hector and CJ are hanging out right now. Gotcha. Hang on. Michael's asking, will I need the cam on my 392? I have ported intake, 85 millimeter throttle body, SRT mid-tube headers. That's going to be the factory Hellcat 392s. MagnaFlow, high flow cats, and full system plus hemi-fever tune. Will I need the cam on my 392? Well, depends on what you're trying to do with it. Yeah, I would say you do. No, you don't need a cam. Look, the problem with the cam is, again, you've got a 392. So your blessing is also your curse. You're starting out at a very high level already. And so the cam, it's kind of like the icing on top, but you're starting out so high that to get you a cam that's going to act right in all conditions is going to be tough. The gains aren't going to be as high as some other engine platforms, but you can definitely get there with a cam. And again, you know, you're talking about SAE corrected, 480, 490 to the rear wheels, STD corrected around 500-ish, you know, plus or minus, you know, a couple of percent points there. Not a bad place to be. Right? So, and that's on a DynoJet dyno. Not necessarily a bad place to be. And you retain all of your drivability. Now, can you make more than that? Yeah, I guess. But you start to sacrifice drivability, and a lot of guys don't want to do that. And let's be real here. A lot of guys won't admit it. But you kind of take them aside and talk to them about it. They miss that tip-in torque. So just know that, you know, if you're looking at cams, err a little bit on the side of caution when it comes to cams. Let's see. Oh, I didn't see this. Hang on. Shawnee, thank you very much. He's asking, would you buy a Mach 1 if you wanted an NA car? Dude, I'm going to say this. Yes, I would, hands down, without doubt. If I was looking for an NA car that I wasn't going to do a lot to, but I wanted to do a lot with it, keep in mind that I have a very varied taste in things I like to do with the vehicle. I like autocross a ton. Closed circuit would be a riot to get into. Drag racing would be cool, but again, I'd be putting a gear in it anyway. I'd be putting a set of like 410 gears in it. So for me, it would be a cool throwback. It would be a cool reset to get a manual transmission Mach 1. Now, if I were building something or going after something for just drag racing or cruising, probably, maybe. The thing is that I really like the idea of the Mach 1, and again, it's giving every Mopar guy exactly what they were wishing for, with the lighter weight, with the same horsepower, with the automatic, with a gear. I mean, dude, it's all there. So if I were building a drag car, like a fun drag car, I'd have to say yes too. But only because it feels like Mopar pretty much left us in the dirt, sit there kind of playing our own sandbox. You know, in a vacuum, the Mopars are fantastic, but the reality is that the competition is starting to stretch their legs a little bit. That's why it is so important to keep your eyes on that Mach 1, because it's those little innovations and those little introductions like the Mach 1 that lead to bigger problems for the Mopar camp later on. Just know that this is now a thing, and that this is everything that every Mopar guy had asked for, and Ford gave it to us. Not Dodge, not your beloved mom Mopar. Ford did. And by the way, let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot of Mopar guys that have bought, let's say, a Scat Pack in 2015 or 2016. You're 4 years into it, right? 5 years into it. A lot of those cars are starting to get paid off if they still own them. And they're looking at the proposition of doing some work to that car. And they're going, well, if I want to make it faster, I can do long tubes and a tune and a, ported intake and what have you. I can do all of that. But I've got this paid off car, and this other thing just came out that reminds me of cars that I used to own or drive. Shawnee's a good example of this. He used to own a Mach 1. He's a prime candidate for the new Mach 1. Had he not bought the Hellcat, Mach 1 would be probably target 1 as far as a new vehicle acquisition. Now, I wouldn't say trade the Hellcat in on a Mach 1. That's clearly a slide backwards. However, it's not quite the slide backwards that it once was if we were just talking about a Mustang GT proposition. So, you can see what I'm getting at here. The divide is being narrowed. Mustang is doing a better job at being Mopar than Mopar is. With this Mach 1, it starts to answer and it starts to check boxes that a lot of guys with paid off cars or nearly paid off cars with a lot of equity in their vehicles, guys that were possibly looking into starting to mod their cars or maybe already starting to mod their cars, and they're not quite at that level of camshaft, but they've got maybe long tubes, or they got exhaust on the car. They've got just enough skin in the game to make them wish they hadn't spent the money. Those are the guys that are looking at the Mach 1. Those are the guys that are going to be the easiest targets, the lowest hanging fruit at those Ford dealerships. But you know what's really going to be the twist? When they drive that car. Because you're going to start seeing reports of guys coming back going, holy shit. And this is guys with 392 cars. 392 cars, which, by the way, not only set the standard, but are the benchmark standard for crisp throttle response. This new revised tune, that gear, that intake, that look, there's something to be said, guys, when you've been looking at that retro look year over year over year. You start looking at something different, you start finding stuff in that something different that you like. And that's when the pocketbook starts to get a little bit itchy. Riff checking in with the 2-arm flexes. I like it. Got the pounds. I dig it. Say, what's up, B? What's up, Riff? Let me check back with everybody else in here real quick. Looks like we got some folks checking out. CJ's checking out. Let's see. Oh, 76239 saying 2015 Charger RTs are slow. I like them though. They're fun to drive. Destroyer saying, hey, B, just got back from the track. 4,500 foot DA. Did you bring your oxygen mask? Destroyer 1320. B is a Mopar master. Y'all appreciate that. CJ's hollering out at AZ. Every party needs a pooper, man. Thank you, Destroyer. Appreciate that, brother. Chris saying, hey, man, how's it going? I watched a video about cams and lifters getting ate up due to lack of lubrication on Hemis. Have you heard of this? I have a 6.4. You're probably talking about Uncle Tony's garage. It is a portion of lack of lubrication. There were some potential issues with the type of lifter. A lot of it had to do with cars that had sat idling for a long time. A lot of fleet trucks, trucks that were on job sites or in plants or things like that had run into that problem. Lots of cop cars early on were going through camshafts left and right, man. Chargers, to find a police Charger without a swap cam is super, super rare. In fact, all of them have new cams in them. The older ones especially. So yeah, there is that to consider. He brought up some pretty decent points that I really haven't even thought of, because the trucks that are in the company that we have, they're all Dodge trucks, and my truck's got 90,000 miles on it, which in this fleet is a baby for a 2017. We got guys with 170, 210, 250,000 miles on their trucks with no issues. Now, with that being said, we used to use Ford trucks, and all of our trucks are Hemis now. They all were Coyote trucks before, and I mean, those things just don't die. The Coyotes don't. I mean, 350, 450, they just keep going. So anyway, that being said, I wouldn't worry so much about it. If you're driving your car, not letting it idle for any real length of time, you should be good. And to that point too, it's rare to see them let go in 6.4s, especially newer ones. And you said you have a 6.4, you didn't say what year. The later ones, 2017, 2018, 2019, you're just not seeing those problems. Although, oh God, I didn't even say this out loud. Had one 392 ETA camshaft, and it was in a SRT Cherokee that was idling at the shop. It ate the cam literally idling at the shop. The customer had stopped by, left the thing running, had the AC going, and it went chirp, 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 click, 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 clack, 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 and that was all she wrote. Just sitting there idling. So, anyway. Let's see. Shawnee's checking out. Let's see. AZ's got a little, I guess he's a little sad, saying, DG, no, I must not know anything about Mopars, because I don't know, suck the Mopar teat long enough for AZ independent. I'm glad you're a nice little shill for Mopar, AZ. That's pretty nice. They rely on guys like you to never ask questions and to only follow the dogma that's given to them. I wish you many Mopars to come in your future. I'm sure you will enjoy them all. K. Anthony saying, what are your thoughts on the Speedlogic's lightweight crash bars for Mopar? I guess you're talking about the bumper supports more than anything. Look, aluminum bumper supports, caveat emptor on this one, man. If you decide you want to use them, I say go for it. I will say that if you're in a crash, kind of a bit of a problem, but if you're going fast enough, you're going to tear up other stuff anyway. Here's one thing to consider, though. The whole kit is only worth about 40 pounds. So there's that to consider. I wouldn't go out of my way to disassemble my front and rear bumpers just to swap those things out, unless you are seriously looking to cut weight with your car. And I mean, you've already removed your driver's seat. Well, you've replaced your driver's seat with like a Kirky or something like that. You got your passenger seat out, rear seat completely out of the thing. We're talking lightweight rotors. We're talking drag pack here. We're talking a lot more effort than just the bumper supports. If that's the case, then yeah, you'll need them, because that's an extra 40 odd pounds. And again, 40 pounds is 40 pounds. However, I will say this. If you decide to go that route, know that, I mean, you've basically built yourself a race car at that point. You're not going to have the same crash protection, but I mean, if you're taking the car to the drag strip and it hits the wall at those kind of speeds, those bumpers weren't going to help you anyway. So just things to consider if you decide you want to do it. It's worth 40 pounds, but is 40 pounds worth that amount of effort? I've never done them on this car, didn't do them on the Challenger, and we haven't done them on any of them lately. So anyway, let's see, HE37 saying, I find it interesting that Ford is getting credit from non-Ford owners for the Mach 1. Many Ford owners are panning it because it's just another track car rather than something for the drag strip. I think what you've got to understand about the Mach 1 is that it is something new. And the reason why a lot of Mopar guys are looking at it is because, oh shit, they're kind of doing what we've been asking Dodge to do for so long. Not to mention the fact a lot of people fondly remember the 2003, 2004, whatever years that they were, Mach 1s. They were neat ass cars. And for those in the know, that was if you're not in the know, it was basically a Marauder engine with a shaker hood. Basically, it was a fresh air intake. You don't want to really call it cold air intake, but a fresh air intake. Made about 300 horsepower, but it was torquey. It was torqueier than the Cobra because of the cams that it used. Again, it used the Marauder cams, which is a different set of cams than the Cobra cams. Anyway, the cars ran great. A lot of people fell in love with them, and then they went away. And again, you know, with it being a with it being you know, kind of an iconic trim level, so to speak, you know, iconic branding for the Mustang, people really did find themselves attracted to it again. So now with the Mach 1, look, here's the problem. The problem is that you couldn't get the Bullet with the automatic. You couldn't get the GT350 with the automatic, but you could get the Mach 1 with the automatic with the GT350 intake. And some aero and some look to it, and it's got some, you know, it's a little bit tarted up, and that's kind of neat. The big thing about it, though, is the horsepower number. The horsepower number is eerily close to the 392. Like, eerily close to the 392. And you've got more aggressive gearing, a lighter weight car, a 10-speed automatic with a fifth gear that is more aggressive than the fifth gear in the NA cars, which helps it to drag the top half or the top portion of that track. Just drag that thing up like you wouldn't believe. I mean, the keeping it in that RPM range is a big deal. It's going to rev better out the back end because of that intake manifold and revised tune. I mean, damn. It's a badass little car. And again, the reason why it's getting so much love from everybody else is because they're finally doing something a little bit different. They're doing something, again, that Mopar guys, well, I wish they'd make the Challenger lighter. I wish they would do this. I wish they would do that. Well, here's a car that represents like 95% of everything that you are hoping for. I mean, what else is there to say? And for a lot of guys that own Mopars that are really looking at that car, these are the NA guys that are sick and tired of waiting for the aftermarket to come out with a freaking intake manifold. These are the guys that are sick and tired of looking at an estimate for a set of cams that's going to cost them $5,000. These are the guys that are sick and tired of hearing about camshafts getting eaten. These are the guys that are sick and tired of having to have a drag setup on their car on the street because they don't hook for shit. Do I need to go forward with this? That's the reason why these guys are getting so excited. And one of the reasons why I wanted to chat about that car tonight is because, well, number one, it's getting buzz, and that's kind of what I do. And the other thing is, you know, when we're talking about Mustang, we're talking about the icon of the brand. And let's get real here again for a minute. Mustang was making Mustangs when Mustang didn't have to be like even exist. Keep in mind, there was a point in time, and some folks need to remember stuff like this when they're talking about being an enthusiast. Some folks might want to remember this and show respect where it's due. You know, pay the devil his due. Where Mustang deserves all the respect is that during the dark ages, and I mean the real dark ages, we're talking about 2003, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay? And keep in mind what happened during those times of 2003, 2004, Cobra, 2003, 2004, Lightning, 5, 6, 7, GT500 comes into play. Understand that there was still a Mustang GT. Understand that there was no Camaro and there was no Mopar, period. You had the Viper, but that didn't really count for this conversation. Mustang was bringing real muscle cars with the GT500, the Termi Cobra, the Lightning to the masses when nobody else existed in the marketplace, much less had something to show for it. It wasn't until 2008 when the Challenger made it to the party where there was another two-door car for it to even show competition to. But it wasn't really competition. The GT500 was in existence at that point in time. You go 2008, 2009, 2010 for the 5th gen Camaro. Finally, something we're talking about again. And then it wouldn't be but another 5 years until the revamp came out. Think about that for a minute. Think about that for a minute and figure out how far we've come in such a short amount of time. And I just spanned how many years that Mustang was making true muscle cars, 500 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque, real numbers, at a point in time where there was no competition. They didn't have to do anything. Pretty cool stuff when you think about it. Pretty good that they kept it alive. And now they're bringing out things like the Mach 1, circa 2003, 2004, that guys remember fondly, and remember it being so cool that Ford was bringing to them something that nobody else was bringing to them at a time, and a variety that nobody else was bringing to them at the time. Remembering that this rough era also brought us the Bullitt Mustang, along with the Mach 1 was the Terminator Cobra, still to this day beloved and put on a pedestal. And the Lightning, which kicked the whole thing off. So, yeah, that's why the Mach 1 is getting so much pub, is because it means something. GT350 doesn't mean anything to those guys. It's non-existent. The last GT350 anybody remembers was from like 1984 or 1985. It was a sticker option. Most people that bought a GT350 were not even old enough to even remember what an original GT350 was, or if they knew what it was only because they read it in magazines. That's it. The Bullitt Mustang is, hearkening back to a movie. I'm surprised there's not a Vanishing Point Challenger, but the reality is that there never really was going to be anything like that. And if you even know what the Bullitt thing means, okay, you kind of get it, but you really have to be in the know to know what that car is. But a Mach 1 for guys that were into cars back in the day, they know exactly what that was. And they also know that not only was it a cool and unique car, but it was attainable. And that, again, is what Ford is doing with the Mach 1. It is, at that price point, still an attainable car. Not like the GT350 at $65,000 or $70,000. These things are supposed to be starting around 50 grand. Oddly enough, the same price as some of these Scat Packs are going for, just north of that. But it's a premium car, not a base car at 45. So to ask the question, or to answer the question, hopefully that paints the picture for you. Here we go. White Knuckles asking, what's up, Miss Rex? Have you had Miss Revlon at the track lately? Yes, I did. I had it at the track last weekend, getting some hot temperature data on the car. And it was kind of funny. So I made some revisions to the tune, and nothing major, just kind of added a little bit of fuel in a couple of areas. And which led me to, I made some more passes. I put another tune together for, just again, adding fuel. I'm not messing with time or anything like that. Actually safening up the tune just a little bit, which probably means that she'll go faster, which normally that's what happens with this car. But more or less just going out and having fun, playing with it. But it was running 1040s, which is pretty typical in, 1700 DA. 1040s at 131.5. So just doing what she does, but I had to add some fuel. So oddly enough, the air charge was low. Boost was high, but actual air charge was low. It's humid, hot, all that. So, but at like 1.2-ish grams and above, or grams and more, I added a little bit of fuel, but then I added up on a couple of cells. I just threw some more fuel at it just to cover it. So look, Revlon doing her thing, going mid-10s on accident on 93 octane gasoline, and you know, kind of weather. It's just been humid. That's been the main thing. Ethan's saying 392s are great stock, 50s and SSs are gold after tender care. Listen, man, I mean, if you want to throw the freaking, if you want to back a Brinks truck up to anything like, well, in any of the new SSs or the LT cars, I mean, mid-10s are not that far away, guys. I mean, we're talking heads cam, intake, throttle body, gear, tune, weight reduction, drag pack, done. I mean, that's kind of how those cars work. But again, it isn't cheap. It's not, people think, oh, it's a Chevy, it's going to be cheap. Yeah, okay, long tube headers aren't cheap. Ported heads aren't, just the work itself isn't cheap. So yeah, I wouldn't suggest taking that taking on that project lightly. Shawnee's saying, hi Rip, what's up Rip? Oh, Rip is asking if I saw Herman's video about the elephant motor and the Demon. Yeah, no, I have. It's kind of a funny thing though. The elephant at this stage of the game is a little bit late to the party, but I thought what was cool, what A was talking about is he was like, look, you know, I wouldn't recommend hot lapping this car. That's kind of code for, you know, he was watching oil pressure and oil temperatures primarily, and it was dumping a lot of temp into that oil, which means, you know, 426s, higher friction, you've got higher piston speeds. You know, he wasn't turning it that hard, but when you start, if you see oil temps really start spiking like that, the guy is saying, look, I probably wouldn't suggest hot lapping it. Better off, I mean, it's a fun engine to talk about in a Resto-mod or something like that, but yeah, that's when you just go, nope, not feeling it. Enjoy your Elephant engine. Let's see. Arthur's saying, oh yeah, Apex, Apex Safety, yeah, use it on my old 1990 LS400 4-liter. By the way, what's up, Mason? What's up, man? Got the arm flex, I like it. Yeah, those were fun times, man. Apex was, it was funny because that guy would come to the dyno. I was a dyno operator at the time. He would come to the dyno and just kind of show me what was going on, what to look for, what to watch out for. Every gauge that he had was a standalone gauge. So there was a lot of fun stuff going on back in the day with a lot of the older stuff, and a lot of guys don't realize. I mean, it was a perfect example of this is CalCon and CalEdit, the tweaker stuff for the Fox bodies. That stuff is still to this day one of my favorite programs for something like that, just because it's just so basic. I mean, you just tell it exactly what you got, exactly what you want. That's it. You're done. You walk away from it. So fun stuff. I mean, you know, expand load ranges and everything else. I mean, it's just kind of a fun thing. But anyway, let's see. Let's see. Base Chad, don't know what that's all about. I mean, I do, but no, I'm not. Let's see. HU37 saying, I can understand the horsepower complaint about the Mach 1. There are rumors that the Mach 1 would have 520 horsepower, rather only 480. I wouldn't want non-fictional shaker hood like the 10-speed. I like the 10-speed auto. Same here. Jimmy's saying, cool GMC you have. Oh, yeah, I have a 71 F100. Oh, cool, with a 513 C6 and 370 gears. That ought to be fun. Yeah, so mine, River's saying, well, GMC does stand for. So, I mean, I like my trace. It's pretty neat. Like I say, 400 small block Chevy, so it's a boat anchor sitting up there. Everybody goes, oh, you got a 400 small block. You can make all this power. And I'm going, yeah, but, I mean, dude, seriously, not really. I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening, but cool truck. I like those old Fords too, man. Rip saying, although I really do like the new Camaro ZL1, and if I was going to get another car on top of my Hellcat and SRT8, it would probably be a ZL1. Great all-around car. They are a lot of fun to drive, I will say that. The ZL1 really did grow on me. I wasn't a big fan of the C6, but going into the ZL1, the car just starts to make sense at that point. The only beef that I have with the ZL1 or the Camaro or anything like that at this point is just it's a little bit claustrophobic, especially with the high door sills. Like, yes, this thing sucks to drive. But Rich asking, what do you think about sticking a different cam in a Hellcat? No. But, okay, be careful with that idea. If you're throwing a bunch of boost at it, okay, go for it at that point. But in stock boost form, you're just not going to get anywhere with it. That's the problem. I mean, you can throw a little bit more lift and duration at it on the intake side. Splitting out the exhaust isn't going to do a lot of good. It's already got a decent amount of exhaust duration in it. I think at 50, it's like a 224 cam, or 228, I think, on the exhaust on these things. Factory. Can't remember now off the top of my head. Anyway, not with stock boost. I wouldn't really start looking at an aftermarket cam until about, I would say, a 285 or a 275 upper pulley. Again, mainly because I don't think you're going to be able to get much out of it. At least we haven't seen huge gains with cams. I mean, you're talking maybe 20 horsepower on a car that's already making 600, not, to the wheels, not something that's making 400 and, whatever. I mean, it's not going to offer up that much of a difference. In fact, it can hurt because if you start getting into more overlap, the problem is that you start hemorrhaging a little bit of boost, which means you're hemorrhaging a little bit of cylinder pressure. That's not always a bad thing if you're going to stretch the thing out for RPM. But I don't really recommend that for this engine. So again, I mean, look, I put them together for 426 combinations and I put them together for stock combinations. All of them, though, have been, or stock displacement, I'm sorry, combinations. But all of them have been overdriven. So just, in other words, smaller upper, bigger lower, or both, which is what I recommend if you're going to go cam. 275 you can kind of get away with, but you're going to need to tune it. Player Slayer saying, GM and Ford made it easy for me at 6'8". I can't fit in a Mustang or Camaro. No kidding, right? Oh, Kevin Collins, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Kevin saying, if Ford ever gets lighter, oh boy, game over. Well, that's a big part of it, isn't it? I mean, seriously. HU is asking, has the 5.7 outlived its usefulness? I can see a turbo V6 replacing the 5.7 and Pentastar engines. The torque with the turbo would make Rams and heavy cars fun to drive. Your thoughts? I don't think the 5.7's outlived its usefulness. You got to keep in mind of where that thing sits, though, in terms of the whole horsepower hierarchy. I mean, it's still pretty darn strong. I mean, compare it to a 5.3 and you'll start to really catch an idea. I mean, yeah, the 5.0 is stout, and you look at the V6 engines, and that's, kind of goes without saying in terms of power production, but they're just not as fun to drive. I test drove that 3.7 with turbo EcoBoost with 355, and I know that at the drag strip that truck would have been faster than my tuned 5.7, or at least it would have been close. The race would have been close. But the thing is that the V8 was just more fun to drive, and that to me meant more. So what I would like to see would be an inline 6 turbo. I think that would be sick to death. And if they come out with something like that for the trucks, that'd be great. Now for the cars, fix whatever issues are going on with the 5.7 and let's move forward from that. Let's see. Sean saying, no new cams in the Hellcat, just go more boost. And that's something else to consider, guys. Look, if you're asking about cams and Hellcats, it's more for show than anything else, because there are guys going mid-9s with the stock cam. So, Arthur saying, B. Mason, what do you think about Ford 6.2 in that first gen Raptor. Would like to see it in some SN95s. It's kind of a boat anchor, man. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't waste your time with it. Decent engine in terms of just being a reciprocating machine that makes power and motivates things, but I don't know. I just not really an awesome. All it is just a big modular engine. It doesn't have a lot. Now, if you throw mods at it, start cams and start porting the heads and everything else, you'll get an amount of power out of it, but it's I wouldn't worry about it. Put a good sounding exhaust on it and a tune, and you'll be happy. Rip is asking, will the 309 help in roll racing? Yes, it will. Player Slayer saying, don't forget about the ugly electronic crossover Mustang coming soon. Yeah, therapy is not working on that one. Kiss saying, my 392 pulls left suddenly, but only in track mode. Any ideas? You're probably smoking the tires. I know if that's not the case, there is no reason why it would pull to any direction in track mode. Michael Banks is saying the 392 Challenger was a 2012 Richland County SCRT 5.7 cop car with cam lifter issue. I put the 392 setup in it. Oh, it's a good running car then. Also got 2012 SC Charger 5.7 at stock 2008. Oh, got a 6.1 in it. Very nice. Michael's saying wife won't let me go police auction without adult supervision. I know the feeling. Mine won't let me look at Craigslist. Ethan Hack saying, if one does a cat delete on a 5.0 and gets an engine light saying that the O2s went out due to E85, does that hurt performance, or is it just an annoyance to have the light on? In the 5.0, no, I don't think it's going to hurt performance too much because it's still going to be driving everything off of your primary cats. But I don't think it would be saying that it's gone out due to E85. If you did the cat delete without MILs or anything in the tune to accommodate the rear O2s, then it's just showing that the computer is finding that there's a fault within the emission system itself. So you need to get MILs or get a tune on there that does away with that, and you'll be good to go. Shawnee is checking out. Adios, amigo. Hope you have a great one. Everybody's talking about the Mach 1 for sure. I think it's a neat car. I think it's great. Ethan's saying, from what I know, is that E85 kills O2s at certain angles. No, not really. O2s, you got to remember, the O2s themselves are not really going to be affected by the E85. I've never heard that, and you got to keep in mind that Ford makes flex fuel vehicles. In fact, I owned one and drove the wheels off of it practically and almost literally. So no, it's not E85 that hurts it. It is a leaded fuel or leaded additives that can hurt it. By the way, don't forget to change your oil twice as often if you're running E85. Rift is, he's asking if he can be pulling left in track mode. It shouldn't. The only time, if the car is going to do that and it's only doing it in track mode, the way it's just, there's not, I don't believe that there's a way that it could do it with the suspension, changing the orifice size to be tighter in track mode, making it, instantly looser or what have you. That would be something you would notice and feel, and the car would literally kind of lean over to that side, or it would wallow to that side. You would notice something much more prevalent. So if it's doing something like that, then obviously that strut's messed up. But normally it wouldn't be in track mode. You may notice that when you go to switch it, either you'll get a check engine light because there's a fault at the shock itself, or when you go to switch it, you'll have the car basically not do anything with that shock. In other words, if there was something wrong internally and your dial just would keep turning or something like that, that'd be an issue. The other issue would be it's stuck and you feel like it's pulling to one side, but it's stuck in street mode. That would maybe be the only thing, but typically you'll get a code for that. So I would say put it on a scanner and just make sure that there's nothing weird going on, no codes, no stored codes or internal codes. But I don't think that there's anything necessarily going on. I mean, in your suspension, again, it would be one of the struts. Obviously, you know, get it checked out if it's doing it, but it would have to be valving. And also to that point, if it was doing that due to valving, I mean, it shouldn't be that pronounced. I mean, your spring rate's not changing, just your compression and rebound management is changing there. Michael Banks is checking out. Rip has got something going on. I can't see that little thing. Chris is saying, is there any way to tune a 99 F-150 with a 4.6? The cats are going bad? Yes, absolutely can. SCT. Or anybody that tunes any of the old stuff can do that. Ethan Axe saying the moisture heat from E85 causes those2s to fail on the Mustang. Really? Haven't heard that. Got a lot of E85 Mustangs come through the shop and haven't had that problem. But, not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that personally I haven't seen it. But moisture and heat from 85, wait, no, it wouldn't be heat related. All the, I mean, your O2 protection, cat over temp and all of that, still going to hover around 1800 degrees. So, I don't know. We got 3 hours into this and I am fading quick, guys. Ported throttle body need a tune? No, sir, it does not. Rich saying, so I'm putting the tune on my Hellcat and I'm wondering what exactly do they usually do in an email tune? Like what exactly do they usually change? It depends on which tuner is giving you the email tune, but they'll change a lot of things. They'll richen it up a little bit. They may add a little bit of timing. They might not. Depends on the tune, depends on the tuner, depends on his faith or lack thereof in your fuel quality. But be some spark modifiers get changed here and there. Hot spark may get changed. Bobble torque might get changed, which will be tip-in torque. So those will be some of the things that change. Player Slayer's asking, easiest way to get burnt rubber off the rear end. Where is my bottle of that stuff? Hang on just a second. Hang on, I got some hanging on the wall over here. Hang on just a second. I think this is it. Yeah, here you go. All right, this is the stuff that I use for that. Now, these ET Street SS's, I really don't have this problem because they don't pill up the way that, in pill, P-I-L-L, just don't get the rubber boogers. But this is some stuff, actually my dad got me some of this, and it's Mother's R3 Racing Rubber Remover. It works pretty well. Safe for use, I'd say, don't go nuts with it, but you just spray it on, let it sit for about 10-15 seconds, wipe it off, comes right off. So there it is again, R3 Racing Rubber Remover, equipped with a spider web and a leaf. Anyway, hope that helps you out. That's what I use. Get up underneath there and get all the funk out of it. Let's see. Even saying, this is what Alex has been saying for a while. I was just wondering if this causes any power loss if the engine light is on. I don't think it does. Not on those cars. It doesn't. I don't think it does. Because it's not going to change timing or fueling just because that particular code is on. You got to remember that the codes that'll start to strip fuel and timing would be any thermal code, so ECT, or for Hellcats, manifold over temp comes into play. You've got engine coolant temperature will start to come into play at that. I mean, you got some funky stuff that will start to kill power, but especially manifold temperature, which is MAT, will start to skyrocket on you. These are just spark modifiers. You get into the spark table with those things. Sometimes even watch the car slide into that. The other thing is if you go into cat over temp, it'll just throw a bunch of fuel at it, so you might see a little bit of a reduction in mile an hour with that. But Those are the only things that really cause that. You know, a rear O2, it's still going to command, it should still command full timing and fueling, assuming everything else is good. Ripped is saying if you spray Crisco oil in the back of the car, rubber doesn't stick as easy. Nah, probably wouldn't do that. I mean, it might work, but not what I do. Ethan's saying expensive headers with E85 and no cats don't have the O2 failure, but when you delete the cat and use stock headers, the E85 sensors, the sensors fail. That's weird. Maybe it's because we always use long tubes. I don't know. Player Sayer saying, thank you, you're very welcome. And Ethan saying it's sort of ridiculous, but I just wanted to know if power would be lost due to the engine light being lit up. No, I don't think it does. And with that, guys, I'm going to check out. We are 3 hours and 20 minutes into this fandango. I'd like to thank everybody for hanging out. Hope you guys had fun. I know I did. And I will catch y'all on the next one. So, y'all have a blessed one. And that is a wrap. Y'all be safe out there. And adios. Oh, wait, hold on, time out. Investor's asking, can I mix racing fuel on a stock tune? If so, what octane do you recommend on track days? Yes, you can, but I would say mix in 1 gallon or maybe 2 at the most of regular 100 octane on a stock tune. Don't go nutty with it. Just put it in there just to be on the safe side. I like 100 octane. I don't like 104 because it's a higher ethanol content if you're using Sunoco. So use the regular GT 260, not the 260 plus. That's my experience. Ethan's asking, got to be the man. Looking forward to the email. Oh, yep, be on the lookout for that. Riff's checking out. Nestor's checking out. Art was checking out. You guys have a fantastic one, guys. Thanks again. I really do appreciate all of y'all. And that's a wrap. Take care. Adios.